And welcome to the pre-show for the SY0-601 Security Plus Study Group. Hey, chat room. Hello, everyone. Welcome. For those of you watching on the replay, welcome. We'll get started here in about 10 minutes. We start at the top of the hour. We're at 11:50 local time here in our Florida headquarters. Hope everybody's doing well. It's good to be back this week. We had our Network Plus Study Group last week. We have Security Plus this week. Next week, 2 live streams for the A Plus study groups, the Core 1 and the Core 2, which I have not written yet, but I will. I've got to get on that. This is, what is this, Tuesday? So I need to get on that. I need to make it happen. Get everything ready for next week. We'll get everything all set up. So I don't even know what questions I'll be asking next week. It's a mystery to all of us. Eventually, I'll have all of this straightened out. Let's check everything. We have recordings going down here. Those are my Cylons doing that recording. Recording up here. That's good. All of the cameras look good. You can kind of see my camera setup now. It's so low that you can see all of that. All of those look very good. It was flickering earlier. I had to firm up some cables. I had to unplug it and plug it back in again. And now it's working. So let's hope that it just continues to do exactly that. We'll get started here in about 8 minutes, and we'll get started with the show. This is not the show. For those of you that are new or have joined us, it is a little more interesting than this. You'll see the front of me here eventually. Right now, you don't see the front of me. You see the back of me. Because I don't know why. Maybe because it's a better view of this, I'm guessing. A different view. Because you normally don't see this view. I guess you see it in the after show now, because I do a little bit of that. Oh, we've got plenty to go through today. A ton of Security Plus stuff. I've got some new things to talk about. I've got some old things to talk about. It's a normal study group, I guess. There's always something going on, right? I have been churning through Security Plus videos. I think I probably shot 10 videos in the last couple days. We are just crushing it with videos. We have over 100 of videos of the new course that are now out. I guess we're at 100 videos that have been released. And so we've got a bunch more. I did tons of editing this morning. So I've got 3 or 4 more that need to go out. I'm going to shoot a little bit of some extra stuff once we're done here today, if my voice will hold out. Because I have one video that I just need to change a couple of slides. I read through it, I look through it, and I think, that needs to be different. But of course, since you see my face on the videos, well, then we have to kind of set it all up and shoot again, which is fine. It's sort of the normal part of me doing my editing. If I get through something and I don't like it, then we throw it out and we start again and get all of that taken care of, which I think is a good way to do it. I like having that flexibility. I would rather get it all done today. I think it would all be done. I think I have about 76 more videos. I guess with the 10 I shot, about 66 more videos to shoot. It's a big course. If this was an A plus course or a Network Plus course, we'd be done. We have 100 videos. It's about right. 100, 120 is kind of it. But this one, obviously, as I've mentioned before, so much bigger. Because of that, there's more videos to do. I know I say only. Yeah, there's only 66 more videos to shoot. But when I shoot, I'm shooting probably 5 to 10 videos in a sitting. So you can run through those relatively quickly, at least the shooting part. The shooting part's really the easy part. The hard part's been done. The hard part was actually putting the content together. Well, the content's done. So now it's all a matter of just shooting those videos. The 501 retires on July 31st. So you could take it on July 31st, pass it. Don't do that. But you could wait until July 31st to take your exam and hopefully pass it. And if you do, you're certified for 3 years. And you never have to take Security Plus exam again. That's the key. That's the important part, is that it doesn't matter which exam you take it one time, and then you just renew it from that point on, which does not require you to take another exam. So that's good for all of that. Isn't 601 better? It's different. It's not any better. It's just different. We could say slightly newer, but what's changed in security in the last 3 years? Not a lot. It was really very much a restructuring and an addition of content. It was sort of a different approach they took to 601 than 501. So when do I plan to finish the playlist? Whenever that last video is edited and posted, that's when it's done. So I don't have a plan. The plan is I'm doing this as fast as I possibly can because I would like it to be done as well. So we could, if every star was to align and I somehow was able to bend physics just a little bit, probably the end of April, somewhere in there. It won't be long. I know it sounds like a lot of videos, like 66 more videos to shoot. Seems like a lot. It really isn't. It's probably 10 to 15 days of shooting. So, yeah, you got to fit that in. There's on days where I'd live stream, I do not shoot video because my voice can't handle that. And on other days, there's other things going on. What if you have a dentist appointment? What if you go to the eye doctor and they have to dilate your eyes? Well, there you go. Can't shoot that day. So those types of things happen too. It's just life kind of gets in there. So whatever you do to get to that point, that's, however long it takes to get to the final video, that's how long it is. So I wish I could tell you, oh, here's the exact date we will be done. I just don't know. I just do as fast as I can, and it will be finished when it's finished. And I kind of like that. I like not having a drop dead date because I feel like I have the flexibility to make it as the highest quality possible. I don't have to shorten things. I'm not under a time constraint. I'm not worried. So you don't cut corners. And for me, I like to think, you can tell me differently, and often you do, but I like to think that the difference in my study materials is that they are a higher quality than study materials you might find somewhere else. That's my goal. So I'm constantly trying to make them better and better and better. I want this to be the very best training course that you would find anywhere. So that's the philosophy I have behind it. So I don't want to rush it, and I don't want to push it out. And I don't. Otherwise, what it's done in January will be finished and go to the next thing. But that's not the goal. The goal is not to make it good enough. The goal is to make it the best it can be. And I think people who are watching see that, and they get that, and they feel that, even if they aren't quite certain about it. That's what that's for. How did I get into this crazy business? Well, I was in IT forever. So right after I got out of college, I started doing IT. So that job took me from sort of a field service to corporate help desk to corporate desktop management, server management, moved me into network, working for manufacturers, for network analysis products and next generation firewalls. So boom, 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 boom. We did it all the way through. And now that's sort of diverted. The internet sort of changed everything. And I thought, well, if I talk to people one-on-one about this technology, I could talk to them in larger groups about this technology. And that's how this all came about. It was sort of an interesting thing. So yeah, all the videos are free. All the live streams are free. We try to do as much as free as possible. And of course, there's other things you can purchase to go along with those things, but they're not required. And they're always free for you to watch. So that's the goal. Less than a minute, we'll get started. Make sure we got everything ready to go. I think we do. I think we're all right. Very, very good. I think that should be good. We've got all Security Plus today, so get ready. What did happen to the lighting? I don't know. What happened? What happened to the light? There's nothing. Same lighting. Nothing has changed with the lighting. It's all exactly where it has always been. That's one of the goals in this studio is I set it up so that it always had the same lighting. I didn't see a brownout, although, I don't know for this. I am not left-handed. I'm right-handed. Mouse is on the right side. Although you may have seen me use the mouse on the left side too. So sometimes it just depends on how my hands are feeling. Interesting. Oh, back camera. Did it? I don't think so. I think we're okay. It's possible. Who knows? It's top of the hour, though. It's time to do a live stream. Let's do a study group, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2021 Professor Messer SY0-601 Security Plus Study Group. It's our study group where I ask you questions from the SY0-601 Security Plus exam objectives, and you can answer them live and online if you're watching this during our live stream. If you're not watching this on the live stream, you can still do that. You can still follow along with all of those things. Hello, chat room. Thanks for being here. Folks in the chat room already contributing to the cause. EXPT626 contributed $19.99. Thank you so much. That's very generous of you as well. We do appreciate that. And for those of you that have asked in the past, hey, can I just contribute along with some of the things? You know, in the past, we haven't really taken contributions, but I've now listened to you. I've decided to listen to people when they tell me things. That doesn't always happen, but now we are. Today, I'm going to ask you questions from the exam. I have so many questions to ask you. The way that you can participate live is by going to the Professor Messer website, open a new window in your browser, go to professormesser.com/QA. There will be a question waiting for you on that page. You can also download an app for this. Go to professormesser.com/QA or use an app from your favorite app store, the Socrative Student app. That is the name of the app that you would like to use. If you do use that app, it will ask you for a room name, and the room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. That is the name you are looking for to put in there. If you do that, there will be a question waiting for you. And that question asks, which of the following would be the best method of sending data to a specific port number on a remote device? Would that be traceroute, netcat, dig, or route? Now, if you think you know the answer, no answering in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. If that looks like a familiar question, it's a rewind question from last month. It's the one to get us off the ground today. Make sure you're able to get into the live stream Q&A. Make sure everything's working for you. See if you happen to know what that is. We will come right back to that question in just a moment. Thanks for being here on the live stream. Hello, everyone who's in the chat room. We were talking earlier in the chat room about some of the things we're doing here. So thank you for being with us. We've got, of course, all of our videos are free and available for you to watch online. The new Security Plus videos are coming along. I talked in the pre-show about how we're shooting so many videos and so often right now. We've got 100 new videos out there. I just shot 10 videos over the last day or two. So you can find all of those when I release them, when I finally get around to writing through all the content I have to write to post them, when I edit the video, when we stick it online. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see when that happens at professormesser.com/YouTube. There's also a weekly pop quiz question for Security Plus. You'll find that at professormesser.com/Twitter. And there's a pretty picture version of this at professormesser.com/Instagram. Today, we're going to be talking about questions that are specific to the SY0-601. But I will let you know that if you are still studying for your SY0-501 exam, you can still take that exam all the way up until July 31st. In fact, I sort of recommend you continue to do that if you can fit it in, because it's a much smaller exam in total number of content that you would have to know. So that's a good choice. If you are still studying for that one, you can still take that exam. And probably you'll be better off for doing that instead of taking the 601. Even if you took your exam at the end of July and you passed, even though the Q&A exam retires, your certification will still remain available for 3 years. So it doesn't matter what they do with the questions and answers. All it matters is that you passed, and as soon as you passed, you're on that 3-year time frame. Obviously, there's a new version of this exam out. That's the study group today. It's the SY0-601. It was released in November. We estimate the retirement date for this somewhere around May of 2024, which means if you're watching this right now in 2021, you have plenty of time to study. It's not going away anytime soon. We just released it. So that's one of those that you don't have to worry about time frames if you're studying for the 601. And if you don't think you can pass this exam by July 31st, the 601 should be the one you study for. And of course, our study group today will all be questions that apply absolutely to the 601. Some of the questions will apply to the 501 as well. I mentioned there are some good reasons why you might want to consider taking the 501 exam over the 601. Go out to the YouTube and you can see my reasoning behind that. You can go to a direct link at professormesser.link/601wait, and you'll be able to see my video why you shouldn't wait for the SY0-601 Security Plus exam. The questions that we'll go through today come directly from the exam objectives. It's exactly the same whether you're taking the 501 or 601. It's one exam. It's 90 questions. It's 90 minutes. And you have to score 750 on a scale from 100 to 900. There are also different kinds of questions on the exam. We will go through many multiple choice-based questions, but there are also performance-based questions on the exam. And I have a performance-based question for you today. So stick around for that. We'll talk more about those in just a moment. Don't forget that if you're studying for your SY0-501, there's, of course, many more study materials available for that exam because it's been out for a while. My Success Bundle is on my website as well at professormesser.com/501SB. That will take you to the 501 Success Bundle that has downloadable videos, practice exams, course notes, my exam hacks ebook, question and answer, priority access. So much more is in there. You can learn about it at professormesser.com/501SB. There's also 501 questions available on my site for free. Those are my Take 10 challenge questions. You'll find it at professormesser.com/take10. And there's questions there for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. We'll get the 601 questions starting up there shortly because those are an archive of the questions that we have during our live study group. I have a video version of this available for replay immediately afterwards, and I make a podcast version of this available afterwards. You can find the links to that at professormesser.com/podcast. And that's a good place to go if you ever want to get your hands on a podcast, an audio version that will just always be there that you can listen to wherever you are. professormesser.com/podcast. The video replay is available on YouTube. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube. You can absolutely do that as well. The interesting part of that is that about a day later, my marketing manager, Lori, who is watching this on the replay, everybody say hi to Lori. She goes through and she puts timestamps in for all of this. So you will be able to go through and find whatever you would like, jump directly to it in the time link. It's very easy. Just click on the time and it will go to that question, that answer, or that whatever you're looking for all of those. In the chat room, somebody was asking about the Exam Hacks ebook and if I have it available for purchase by itself. I don't have it available for purchase by itself. However, I have something in the middle. For those of you, at least in North America, one of the things that you'll find on my site is that there are now discounted CompTIA vouchers that you can purchase from professormesser.com. This is something brand new. I just put it on there this weekend. So if you haven't seen this before, that's what this is. So you can get your A+, your Network Plus, your Security Plus voucher from there. You have to get your voucher anyway. And instead of paying the full price, I have some discounted vouchers there that you can purchase. These vouchers, normally you can purchase vouchers in a lot of different places. And you get your voucher and you can go take your exam. But for those of you that are purchasing the voucher from professormesser.com, you also get along with this a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. The downloadable version of this is on my website. So if you're purchasing these vouchers from my site, why don't you get the Exam Hacks ebook to prepare you for the exam? That's the way I was thinking about it. So as soon as you purchase, it's one of these things where we turn these around and you can get your hands on this in about a day. We get them back to you in at least one business day, usually before, and you will immediately have access to the Exam Hacks ebook immediately after you purchase. So kind of a bonus there, something a little extra. You not only get your voucher, but of course, you get a little something to go along with that. If some of you are interested in other vouchers as well, right now I'm offering A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, but if there was a different voucher you were interested in, let me know. I can always add those into this list as well. So that's a lot of what's going on here. But let's talk about the question we asked earlier, which was, which of the following would be the best method of sending data to a specific port on a remote device? Our possible options were traceroute, netcat, dig, and route. 43% of you said netcat, 34% of you, just over a third, say route, 18% said trace route, and 6% said dig. So we were a little not quite sure on that one exactly which one we should go with. If you were one of the folks, we'll look at the one that had the highest number. 43% of you said Netcat, and that is the right answer, Netcat. Netcat is a network concatenation utility, kind of a fancy name, which just says you can read and write information to the network. Send information across the network link, retrieve information across the network link. So you can listen for data to come in, or you can send some information out itself. It's quite a nifty utility, and it's very useful for setting up a backdoor in a machine so that you can then gain access to it later. There's plenty of options on other operating systems for this utility. Always a nice capability to have, and something that you do need to know for your exam. So don't forget about that. This is one of those utilities that's important you to understand not only what it is, but how you would use it, because that's, of course, how they ask these questions on the exam. So for those of you that did answer Netcat, 43% of you got that one absolutely right. The route command is used to view the routing table or to add or remove routes from the routing table, but it does not send data to a specific port number on a remote device. So route would not be the right answer. Trace route allows you to see the routes or routers between your device and another device. But again, it's not sending data to a specific port number on a remote device. It's instead doing a series of tests and looking for the ICMP replies coming back. And lastly, dig is a command used to query name servers. It is not a utility you use to send data to a specific port number on a remote device. It is instead used to query and identify the information that might be in a DNS server. So in this case, your only option, not just the best method, but the only option really, is option B, Netcat. 42% of you got that one right. Well done. Let's do some more questions. One of the things I told you earlier is that I have a performance-based question every month on these study groups. It's a different performance-based question every month. So I have, of course, a performance-based question for you today. What's interesting is this one is going to ask you for information that is characterized a little bit differently on the 601 exam than it is on the 501 exam. So those of you that are studying for the 501, you might have different answers for this one than those of you studying for the 601 exam. This will all be very clear to you in just a moment. So let's talk about performance-based questions first. These will be a handful of questions you get at the beginning of your exam. They are not multiple choice-based questions. You can't guess at these because they are fill in the blank. There's matching questions. You have to put things in order from fastest to slowest or highest to lowest or some other type of sorting method. It just depends, but it's anything but multiple choice. Fortunately, there's just a handful of these. You might get 5 plus or minus a few, but this is something that you'll see very early in the exam. So don't get too worried or wrapped up in the time frames of this, and also watch your clock. You don't want to spend all of your time on these performance-based questions before you even get to the multiple choice. A lot of people skip over the performance-based. They might read through them as they go. Then they go through all of their multiple choice-based questions, and then they come back and take care of the performance-based at the end. Find the strategy that works for you. Find the one that you think would be best for the way that you work, and follow that one. Your performance-based question of the month asks, provide the appropriate multi-factor characteristic for each description. And I have 5 descriptions here. The first is a user's unique typing style. The second characteristic or description is plug in an ID card during the login process. Next one is a fingerprint is required to access the data center. The fourth multi-factor characteristic for the description is a certificate is signed by the CIO. And the last description is the ATM requires a PIN for all transactions. That's a PIN. It requires a PIN for all transactions. Those descriptions, again, they are a user's unique typing style, plug in an ID card during the login process, a fingerprint is required to access the data center, a certificate is signed by the CIO, and the ATM requires a PIN for all transactions. So there is a multi-factor characteristic that would go along with each of these. Find the one that fits the best. Some of these, if you're studying for the 501, some of these will make no sense. They won't quite fit exactly into the 501. If you're studying for the 601, you should certainly get all of these right. So this is the real challenge, is making sure you have the right ones in your brain, especially if you've been studying for the 501 and you've switched gears to the 601. It's a little bit different, isn't it? They changed a few things. They added a lot of things. They removed a lot of things, and they changed some things. And this is one of those things they changed. So for those of you studying the 501, you'll probably do pretty well for this. So in the chat room, if you skip over the performance-based questions, you go all the way through the rest of the questions. Do you have to click the back button 80 times? No, thankfully, no. There's an index page you can bring up that just lists out every question, and you can jump to a particular number immediately. It goes very, very quickly. So it will tell you, actually, if you mark it, if you flag it, it'll even tell you, you flagged this question. It gives you a little visual on the screen so you can click that one very quickly and go right to it. That's the real key. This is where you have to really worry about what's going on there. So a number of you are typing these in. I notice a lot of you are trying to figure this one out because a couple of these don't follow those 501 multi-factor characteristics. Notice how I kept that a very broad term, the multi-factor characteristics. You'll understand more about why I say that in just a moment when we go through all of this. These multi-factor pieces are a little bit, they have some nuance, I guess we could say, in the 601 exam. It's not quite as straightforward as it was in the 501. So there's different categorizations of multi-factor. So that's where you want to focus on, is those pieces of it. If you think you know the answers, please answer at professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answers there. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. Figure out all of those. Yeah, these can take some time. So for those of you that are worried about the time on the exam, there's not a lot of time. You always run out of time on the Security Plus exam. So always check your clock. There's a clock in the upper right. It always tells you what's going on. So make sure you take advantage of that. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's start from the very beginning. I want to provide the appropriate multi-factor characteristic for each description. Our first description is a user's unique typing style. You ever notice how you would type in a password and it kind of sounds the same every time you do it? There's the same number of delays between keys and certain delays between other keys as you type. And maybe you hit the enter key very hard. Maybe you hit it very softly. It's a very unique way that you do it. And it's very common for you to repeat that every time you type in your password. Well, that is a characteristic that you can associate with multi-factor authentication. The characteristic is something you exhibit. Something you exhibit. So maybe a walking style, a gait is a type of something you exhibit. It's not something you would use to completely associate a particular person with that, but it does help give you a little bit more evidence that, yes, it happens to be that person for those pieces. Next on our list was plug in an ID card during the login process. It's not good enough for me just to give my username and password. I also have to plug an ID card in, and the card obviously is something I have. So something you have was the characteristic we were looking for. The something you do care is not the right answer for the first one, though. See, you're in that 501 mindset. This is the 601 exam, so it's a completely different set of multi-factor considerations. Next, a fingerprint is required to access the data center. Fingerprint is something you are. It's a biometric. To have that there. So this is really one of the important parts of this is knowing that biometrics are something that we are. We obviously can't change that very well to have that. So make sure you're familiar with those as well. Next on our list, another 601 specific type of characteristic, a certificate is signed by the CIO. That is someone you know. Oh, well, the CIO is vouching for me. I know the CIO, therefore, that's a particular login factor that I can use, or factor you can use for anything, not just login, but authentication. So the certificate signed by the CIO would be someone you know. In fact, if you have PGP, you know that the PGP certificates are all signed by someone else. PGP's method of trust is a web of trust, which means that I know someone, you know that person, if that person signs our certificates, then we can trust each other because we have a single person in common. And you can create an entire web of that for this. So that is one where someone you know becomes very, very important. In fact, that's a very good example right there. Could be your PGP certificate assigned by the CIO. That's someone you know. And lastly, the ATM requires a personal identification number for all transactions. That is something you know. You know the personal identification number. You know your password. It's in your brain. And if it's something in your brain that nobody else can really see or get, then it's something you know. Of course, it's something you know. You remember your personal identification number, and that is in your brain. So those are the multi-factor characteristics that we were looking for. These are obviously very 601 specific. And for those of you wondering, yes, if this was the 501 exam, I think your unique typing style would be something you do, but you can see those terms have changed. So minor changes in the exam objectives and the way that we approach or characterize some of these multi-factor authentication methods. But these are things that you need to know, and this is just a few of them. There are others on the list. Make sure you refer to the exam objectives so that you know exactly which one of these you need to know and how they would work through all of this. And of course, the video on this is video section 2.4. This should be 601, SY0-601. I believe it's 2.4 multi-factor authentication. I don't think that's version. Maybe I've got that wrong. I'll have to check my footnotes when we are done with this today. But check your exam objectives. That's the number. If you ever see my videos are numbered, and you're wondering, where does he get those numbers from? That's from the exam objectives. So if you're reading the objective and you're in section 2.4 and you're thinking, I need more information on this, you have to find my videos for section 2.4, and they match up exactly. So it's very easy to find exactly what you're looking for. Very useful. Does the exam allow for partial credit on these performance-based questions? It does. It might, or it might not. The CompTIA website has a frequently asked questions file that says, we could do that, we might do that, we might not do that, but you will never know. So unfortunately, we don't know. That one sort of lends itself towards partial credit. So I'm in my hope is that they would give it on that. Here's another question. I already put it on the screen so we can go through it and answer this one. The next question on our list is a multiple choice based question. This question asks, a system administrator has replaced a storage drive and restored a server from backup using a full backup and multiple additional tape sets. Which of the following would best describe this backup type? Would it be incremental, full, scheduled, differential, or imaged? A system administrator has replaced a storage drive and restored a server from backup using a full backup and multiple additional tape sets. Which of the following would best describe this backup type? Would it be incremental, full, scheduled, differential, or imaged? If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. It's the best place to go if you're watching this live. Now, if you're not watching this live, this is a replay. There won't be anything on that link. professormesser.com/QA will never change for you, but you can still follow along with what we're doing here. So that might be useful if you're in that particular situation. This is a real key to knowing exactly how these backups work and how to restore from backups. That's obviously an important part of IT security. So make sure you're familiar with these as well as you go through them. This is also, by the way, one of these types of questions where you kind of have to read through the details of the question. This is very common on the Security Plus exam, is a lot of the final answer you get will be tied up in the details of the question. And some of these questions are extensive. Some of them are relatively quick, like this one. It just depends. The questions themselves, I think, come in handy. So if you're familiar with the style of questions on the exam, I think it will help you answer them too. You'll very rarely get what I call trivia questions on the exam. The challenge, of course, is this is not going to be that situation. I love in the chat room that you're asking who's watching this on replay right now, because they won't be able to chat with you on the replay. And we're obviously live for you to be able to put that into. Anyway, I get the joke. I enjoyed that. It's very not very often in the study group where you get me. You got me on that one. Let's do this question, though. Speaking of getting me, I don't know how that applies to this. A system administrator has replaced a storage drive and restored a server from backup using a full backup and multiple additional tape sets. Which of the following would best describe this backup type? Would it be incremental, full, scheduled, differential, or imaged? Well, we've got a number of different answers here. We did not get quite the right answer on this one. So we know that we don't have a majority, but we have certainly a large number on here to go through. The question, the answer that 42% of you answered was incremental. Incremental was really the largest. The plurality of you answered incremental. 25% of you said differential, and 22% of you said full. That's kind of a tie, I guess, for second place. Lastly, you can't really see the percentage at the end. There we go. Now you can see it a little better. We have 10% of you that said imaged and 2% said scheduled. So if we go with the one that most of you said, it would be A, incremental. And indeed, incremental is the right answer. Let's look at an incremental backup and why it would be incremental. We'll start with this one that we have here. The incremental, we have a Monday through Thursday, and then something happened at the end of Thursday. Maybe on Friday we have to recover everything. But we'll start on Monday. Let's say on every Monday we do a full backup. So we're backing up everything on a server. We have a file that has everything. Well, of course, people come in on Tuesday and they start working and files change. So at the end of Tuesday, we're going to back up everything that has changed. We don't have to back up the things that haven't changed. We've got a full backup for the things that haven't changed. We only need to back up the things that have changed. So that is a good one. That incremental comes in handy for those pieces. We have also another day goes by, more files change for this, and the files that change, we need to back those up on Wednesday. But we don't have to back up everything that we backed up on Tuesday. We just have to back up everything that has changed since then incrementally as we go through this. Next on our list, we have another here, Thursday. We did a lot of work on Thursday. You can see a lot of things changed on Thursday. So we back up another group of things that changed. So we've got a full backup, a bunch of things changed on Tuesday, a few things changed on Wednesday, and then a lot of things changed on Thursday. Now everything breaks. Let's say the server dies, the hard drive goes up in flames. We have to replace it, and we have to restore all of this data to that server. So we're going to need all of this information, probably in this order, because these did get changed in a particular order. So now we need the full backup, and then we need every incremental backup that occurred since that time. So the recovery for this is going to involve the full backup, and then every single one of the incremental backups that occurred since that time. So there will be, in this case, probably multiple backup sets, whether those are stored on tape or stored on disk or stored in files, but we will need the full backup and the multiple incrementals that were created for that particular piece. And of the options that we have here, that was the only one that really described this well. We asked to restore using a full backup and multiple additional tape sets. So incremental, that defines incremental perfectly. If this was a differential backup, we would be updating every day the differences since the full backup. So the backup that we did Thursday would cover everything that had changed since Monday, which is a little bit different than our incremental that we just looked at. So in that case, you only need two. You need the full and one single extra differential backup set. Well, that was different here. We were using a full backup and multiple additional tape sets. That would not be differential. So we can cross differential off our list. Would not be a full backup. A full backup would just be one set. We would not need multiple additional tape sets, so full backup would not apply either. An image and a scheduled backup describe a type of backup, but have no specific description as to how many tapes you would use, how many backup sessions. In fact, images are usually a single backup set. So that probably would not be the right one to use. And then we have the scheduled backup. That just describes when you will back it up. Has nothing to do with how many different sets of tapes or backup sessions that you will have. It's just a way to schedule. So the best option here, or the question which asks the one that would best describe this backup type, is indeed A, incremental. 43% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. So absolutely something you should work through. The next question I have is one for you that if you're ever working through this, the next question for you is a 601 question for sure. I'm thinking back to the 501 exam objectives and how these apply, but certainly something you can work through. Let's go through the next question, though. This next question asks, which of these features is available when using MAM? M-A-M. Which of these features is available when using MAM? Is it automated failover? Is it enterprise app catalog? Is it encrypted tunnels? Is it multiple authentication factors? Or is it FDE? Which of these features is available when using MAM? Is it automated failover, enterprise app catalog, encrypted tunnels, multiple authentication factors, or FDE? If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer on that link at the bottom of the screen, professormester.com/QA. Lock it in. Tell me what you think you believe the answer is. Now, if you don't know what the answer is, take a guess. That's what you should be doing on your exam anyway. Never leave a question blank on the exam. One thing we do know is that you don't get penalized for answering a question incorrectly. They don't take points away from you. You just don't earn any points, I guess is the way to think about it, which means it's no penalty for just taking a guess. In fact, the only thing that could really happen here is you could get it right. You could earn points. And in that particular case, it's a bonus. On the exam, a lot of my questions have 5 possible answers. On the exam, a lot of the questions are going to have 4 possible answers. Some of them do have more than 4, though. Some have 5 and 6 and 7, depending on the question. Some questions, not a lot of them, some questions ask you for multiple answers. They will tell you to pick 2 or pick 3, and they tell you how many you need to pick. So that helps. But you will find on the exam, you often see 4 possible answers, but you occasionally will see more than that for all of those. This is a 601 specific question, as I mentioned, for the poor folks in the chat room saying, I don't know what you're talking about on the 501 side. That's right. These are different. What is the difference between a 401 and a 601 exam? 6 years. That is the difference. An enormous difference. A remarkable difference. So much of a difference, I will not even detail it. It is so much of a difference. The 501 was a huge difference over the 401. And then the 601 is another huge difference over the 501. So really quite a challenge in knowing what those things are. Let's see how you did on this one. A number of you have locked in your answers already. So let's go through this and see how you did. Which of these features is available when using MAM? Is it an automated failover, an enterprise app catalog, encrypted tunnels, multiple authentication factors, or FDE? Let's look at the results. 47% of you say it's multiple authentication factors. That kind of makes sense with the MAM. Maybe that's where that comes from. 21% said encrypted tunnels. 20% said an enterprise app catalog. That's sort of a tie for second. And then kind of a tie for third between FDE, which would be full disk encryption, and automated failover with 7 and 6% on there for both of those. Now, when I tell you what MAM stands for, it will probably be a little bit more clear to you. MAM stands for Mobile Application Management. Mobile application management, this is obviously an enormous concern for security professionals today because we all have our mobile devices, and our mobile devices have company data on them. And then how do you manage having all of this company data walking around all over the world? Well, you need to manage it properly. And this is where you really need to understand how to add an app, remove an app, control app use, control function use on the device. This is the important part of this. Another nice part about this, because you don't want people just downloading and installing any application, but we also have specific apps that we've built in our organizations for our own internal use. So we need to have some way for people to be able to install those apps And one of the features of a mobile application management device is the ability to have an enterprise app catalog that effectively is your own internal app store. So it's very nice to have. You can tell people, oh, you need the inventory app. You need the app for the West Coast inventory. You'll find that on the Enterprise App Store. Just download it and put it on your mobile device, and then you can use that app. This is also a place where you can monitor the use of these applications. You can see what devices may have unauthorized apps on them, and then you can decide what to do with this. And then, of course, from a security perspective, you always need the ability to nuke from space, nuke it from orbit. So this is one that you have is very important. And of course, you want to be able to do that too. So remotely wiping the application data. For those of you in the chat room wondering, where is this coming from? You have never heard this before. The mobile application management comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you want more information on this, it is from the SY0-601 section 3.5. It will be in my video called Mobile Device Security when that video is available. So that is one that becomes incredibly important. The real key here is the Enterprise App Catalog. That's your option. 21% of you said the Enterprise App Catalog is the one you would work through. It would not be multiple authentication factors. A MAM has nothing to do with your authentication factors and how they are used. We have 21% that said encrypted tunnels. Again, encrypted tunnels is not the primary function of your mobile application management service. Full disk encryption should be something that's kind of happening on your mobile devices anyway and your other devices. So that'd be another place to go for those pieces, but does not apply to the mobile application management realm. And automated failover. There's no failover. If your phone breaks, there's no failover. You go back to the store and you get another phone, I guess. You make sure that it's available to with a backup so you can restore that device as quickly as possible. Maybe that's the failover, but it's not automated. And the mobile application management doesn't deal with automated failover anyway. Your only answer here is the one that 22% of you chose, which was Enterprise App Catalog. That is the right answer. There's a lot of other mobile security topics on the Security Plus exam. It's one of those sections of the exam that was increased quite a bit. So if you're studying for your SY0-601, you'll learn about MAMs, you'll learn about MDMs, you're going to learn about a lot of other things as well relating to mobile technologies. It's all in that section. It's a big section. So you'll find all of those in the CompTIA exam objectives. Let's do another multiple choice question. This next question asks, a system administrator would like to identify all known vulnerabilities on a remote device. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be Cuckoo, DNS enum, Scanless, the Harvester, or Nessus? Definitely a 601 exam question here. A system administrator would like to identify all known vulnerabilities on a remote device. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would you use Cuckoo, DNS enum, Scanless, the Harvester, or Nessus? So that is the real set of questions you need to answer. Go through each one of those. Obviously, you need to know what each one of those things are. I didn't make up any of those, by the way. Those are real things. For those of you not 601 folks, those are real things that you would use. So each one of those has a purpose and a structure and a need and a way to use them. And you need to know all of those things and many more for the exam. They have a lot of utilities and a lot of tools and a lot of things you would use in the exam objectives. I think it's section 3.1 of the exam objectives. So make sure you're familiar with what all of those might be and find the thing that is there. Be able to break through what those happen to be. This is one that you have to know what those are. Maybe you've used some of these tools before, some of these features, some of these capabilities, and you can maybe put on or take off the list of possible things in this. There's a lot of utilities, though. I haven't gotten up to shooting this particular video yet, but it's a big one. It is an enormous one. So there will be a lot there. But this is a fun one because I get to demonstrate the functionality. I've already gone through every single one of these utilities and done a few demonstrations of it. It's a lot of fun to go through. It's a lot of good things to know. I find it's really interesting, too, because these are utilities you may not necessarily run into unless you're really in the security realm. And then you run these utilities and realize, wow, there's a lot of data on the internet that perhaps you had no idea was out there. These utilities will tell you these things. Just a scary part of the exam objectives, which is fun in my world. I spent a huge part of my career in IT security or next generation firewall systems engineer, and every day was scary. Every day was, did you see that? What is on this network? Look at the things we saw on this network. I got to go from network to network to network and plug in and see these things every day. Remarkable. Okay, enough of those stories. Let's answer this question, which asks, a system administrator would like to identify all known vulnerabilities on a remote device. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be Cuckoo, DNS enum? Would it be Scanless? Would it be the Harvester? Would it be Nessus? So let's see how you answered before I go to the answer. And we could see 75% of you said Nessus. That's pretty strong. Everything else single digits. 8% said Scanless. 7% said DNS enum. 6% said Cuckoo. 4% said the Harvester. Maybe some of you didn't think any of those were real, but you had heard Nessus before, right? So we've heard of Nessus, so we're going to choose that one. Well, if you did that, you got it right. That is the right answer. Nessus is the thing that will identify known vulnerabilities on a remote device, probably the industry leader in vulnerability scanning. So in fact, they got free ones. So if you wanted to download Nessus yourself and run it and do some testing on your local network, which is what I did on my local network here, and you will get to see all the vulnerabilities that I found on, I think, my printer. I think I scanned my printer and I showed you some of those in the video, or I will show you some of those in the video. Finds all these vulnerabilities because it constantly updates itself. No, it's free all the time. It's not just for a few days. Free all the time. Now, there are limitations, and there are limitations in licensing and limitations in functionality and limitations as to how quickly you get the signatures, but it is free and you can run it. Very nice to have that there. So very, very useful to have that functionality. Also, great reports. You'll see the reports in the videos too, but great reports. You can run it, get some fantastic reports. They all work very, very, very well. Very useful. And in fact, it looks like this. There's one of the 10.1.10.13 in my network. Was that the printer? I want to know. I don't remember what machine that was, but you can see, I don't think it was a printer. I think it was something else. It might have even been a VM I was running, but plenty. In fact, it was a Linux kernel on Ubuntu. Was it a Ubuntu machine? It could have been. Could have been just download a stock Ubuntu machine and ran Nessus against it. I want to think that's what I did to have that there. So that is what you would use to be able to do that. What a great looking report too. And it documents and has a database and keeps all of these things and drills down into it. A lot of great functionality inside of that. Nessus was the right answer to use. All of these other utilities like Cuckoo and DNS enum and Scanless and the Harvester are all extremely useful utilities. Some of them are used for enumeration of DNS information. Some of them are used for enumeration from websites and gathering information from OSINT. So all of these things we'll talk about in the other videos. You'll notice we didn't really go into that level of detail for the 501. The 601 really emphasizes these utilities and that you understand what they are, and in some cases how to use them. So if you are studying for your 601, make sure you're familiar with every single one of those and the rest of the big list that they have in the exam objectives. It is a big list, section 3.1, to find all of those. If you answered Nessus, answer E, got it absolutely right. Absolutely correct. Let's do another multiple choice question. This next question asks, a pair of managers in the IT department have access to the safe, but each person only knows half of the combination. Which of the following would describe this policy? Would it be least privilege, separation of duties, corrective control, clean desk policy, or a non-disclosure agreement? Which one of those? If you think you know, go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer. For those of you asking, this is Socrative. This is the Socrative app or the Socrative front end that we are using. So see if you happen to know what this is. The question again is, a pair of managers in the IT department have access to the safe, but each person only knows half of the combination. Which of the following would describe this policy? Would it be least privilege, separation of duties, corrective control, clean desk policy, or non-disclosure agreement? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. Try to figure out what this one happens to be. I think some of you might know what this one happens to be. This is also a 501 question. So those of you studying for the 501, we got a 501 question in here for you. You should be able to answer this one as well. I don't know if that's a hint or not. If you're studying for the 601, you probably have never seen the 501 materials for each one of those. Have that there. For Windows, is Nessus 8 only available for 32-bit? I have no idea. I do not run the Windows version of that. The way I ran it is I loaded it up as a service. I want to say I ran it natively in Mac OS, but I might have loaded it up. No, I think I loaded it up as a service in a VM. I loaded it up on, well, I'll have to look at my VMs. I'll bring this up later and we'll have a look at it. I think I loaded up as part of a VM, a security VM. We'll see which one I used because there were a few that I went through. So I can't remember which one I finally stuck with through the whole part of it and getting all those pieces together. Let's see how you did with this question. We asked, a pair of managers in the IT department have access to the safe, but each person only knows half of the combination. Which of the following would describe this policy? Would it be least privilege, separation of duties, corrective control, a clean desk policy, or a non-disclosure agreement? 69% of you say separation of duties. 17% of you say corrective control. 14% of you say least privilege. And then we drop down to almost nothing. Non-disclosure agreement, 1%. Clean desk policy, 0%. That is one, I think, to know about. But those are the ones that everybody answered here. The vast majority of you chose separation of duties. This is sometimes referred to as split knowledge, so that not any single person knows everything there is to know about that particular thing. So a good example is the one I use in the video itself, which is knowing half of a safe combination, which was the question that we had for this one. So if you know half of it, and the other person knows half, you should still be able to open the safe up. That's the idea, which is a little bit different than dual control. With dual control, both people have to be present to be able to do that particular thing. I think of that one as both people have to slide in the keys and turn the keys at the same time. You can't have one person put in half the combination and then they leave, and then the other person comes in and puts in the rest of the combination. That's not the same thing. Dual control, not the same thing as split knowledge. So that is one that you do have to know the differences for, especially if you are working through the 501 or 601 exam. There's also, as I mentioned in this question, a clean desk policy, which says when you leave your desk, you can't leave anything on top of it. Nothing. The desk has to be clean. So that becomes pretty important if you're in a situation where you have to have that level of clean desk policy. I've never worked anywhere that had a clean desk policy. We could have probably used that, though, in a lot of places. It'd be nice to keep my desk clean anyway, at the very least. That means that the separation of duties, answer B, is the one that most of you chose. That is the correct answer. Would not be least privilege, as we just mentioned. Or we didn't even talk about least privilege. Least privilege means we've configured a system or a process that gives you just the bare minimum to complete whatever duties you need to complete your job. We don't give you administrator privilege just because we can. We give you the least possible privilege. That is the best idea, being able to work through that for security perspective. Corrective controls are a type of control that will fix things if things go wrong. That is not knowing half of a combination to a safe. Clean desk policy, 0% of you chose that one. We talked about what clean desk policy is. And a non-disclosure agreement, or an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, very useful for keeping things private between two entities, but has nothing to do with knowing half of a safe combination for those. So that would not be the case either for those. So if you answered answer B, separation of duties, got that one absolutely right. Folks in the chat room asking, hey, where can I get some free Security Plus 601 materials? And there are an entire set of videos, 100 videos posted on my website for the SY0-601, an extensive number of videos and many, many more to come. So tons of free materials, no registrations required. There's no extras that I keep in the back that you have to pay for. Nope, everything is there for free. Everything I got goes out there for free. One of the things a lot of people do, though, is they notice, well, there's going to be 176 videos in this series. That's a lot of videos. You may not want to read through or watch every single one of those videos. It would be nice if all of the content from the video was already encapsulated into a single document. And that would be my SY0-601 course notes. These are the course notes. There's both digital and physical versions of the course notes. They are identical in content. Obviously, the physical one is a printed color book. You can see all of the charts and graphs and different pieces that you would see in the exam. I don't know if I have my course notes up to show you on my screen, but I can do that very quickly. The course notes are complete, even though all of my videos have not been produced yet, because we're in the middle of shooting all of these videos that we have. The course notes are complete. I create the entire course before I start shooting the first video. So the course notes absolutely are going to be complete. Whenever you start going through and looking at these materials and the course notes and the things that are there, there is an extensive amount of content, especially in the 601 exam. So what is it? 120 pages of notes are in this. That's a big set of course notes. So if you're in that situation where you're also trying to kind of encapsulate everything that's in these videos into one single place, the course notes is what's going to do it for you. This is really, really going to help to have any of those. The course notes themselves, a nice addition. You can also, and you go to my site right now, we have the course notes. Also later on, some folks in the chat room are asking about practice exams. We will have a practice exam also available later on in the year. Just depends on when we get there and work through those. I think the important part for me is really knowing what to study for. So the exam objectives and the course notes are really going to be the perfect place to go to understand this. So hopefully this can be something that can help you as well. It's certainly going to save you time. If you're someone who has to write up a lot of different materials, a lot of different information for this, this is going to save you an immense amount of time. Feel free to go through that, become more familiar with those pieces of it. Whenever I start going through, I think I've got the course notes on my screen finally to show you. Here they are. There they go. The course notes are pretty big, 120 pages, but they have everything inside of them. So all of the charts, all of the diagrams, all of the text, it's all in there. They are extensive. And you have the choice when you're purchasing to decide whether you would like to get the physical version of the course notes or the digital version of the course notes. Find the one that works best for you. They both have exactly the same information, so you at least have an option of which one you can use. Find out more information about that at professormesser.com/601CN. 601 course notes is what that's for. Or follow the links on the Professor Messer website. Let's do another question. This next multiple choice based question asks, an attacker has circumvented a security control by modifying their MAC address. Which of the following would describe this attack type? Would that be cloning, denial of service, jamming, rogue access point, or malicious script? May not have exactly what you were hoping to see there. An attacker has circumvented a security control by modifying their MAC address. Which of the following would describe this attack type? Would it be cloning, denial of service, jamming, rogue access point, or malicious script? Let's see if you think you happen to know what that is. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer. If you please no answers in the chat room, please no hints in the chat room. You want to be sure you find the right one. So for those of you in the chat room that were trying to decide which notes should you get, the 501 notes or the 601 notes, you should get the notes that are specific for the version of the exam that you are planning to take. The 501 content is very different than the 601 content. So make sure that as you're going through this, that you pick the right ones. You do not want to use 601 materials to study for the 501. You do not want to use 501 materials to study for the 601. And you have until July 31st to take the 501. So you've got a pretty good exam time for take that exam, pretty good study time. As we sit here, sort of the end of March, beginning of April, May, June, July, it's 4 months. And the average is about 3. So we're still in a good time frame if you're planning to take the 501. So that's where I kind of sit with that, is you still got time to study for that 501 and pass it. So make sure you step through those too. That might help you as you're going through all of this. Now, if you're trying to figure out, maybe you start with a 501, you get up to July and you realize, oh, this is not working out. Now I'm going to shift gears to the 601. There is an upgrade program in place. So you don't have to pay full price for the 601. It's a kind of almost 50% discount, depending on what you are getting, the digital or the physical. So maybe that will help you as well if you're going through this. Might help you with figuring out which way to go with these. Let's see how you went with this question, though. The question asked, an attacker has circumvented a security control by modifying the MAC address. Which of the following would describe this attack type? Would it be cloning, denial of service, jamming, rogue access point, or malicious script? 68% of you say it's cloning, but 17% of you say rogue access point. And then single digits for denial of service, jamming, and malicious script. Almost a 3-way tie for third there. Well, if we're modifying the MAC address to match someone else's MAC address, then we are doing MAC spoofing, or as some people say, MAC cloning. This is where we are modifying our MAC address to copy one that already exists out on the network, probably because we know that that MAC address will circumvent some type of security control like a MAC filter. So if we can do that, that would be great. This works, of course, whether it's a wired network, a wireless network, and most drivers, most of your network drivers allow you to change the MAC address. I don't know if many of you even knew that, but it's in the configuration of your driver and allows you to put in what the MAC address would be. So you can effectively make your MAC address anything. It's all in the configuration of the driver. This is also a good way to create a denial of service. That would be a very bad way to make everything crazy. Your switch would go crazy trying to figure out, oh, you're over here. Wait, now you're over there. No, wait, now you're over there. Now you're over here. Your poor switch forwarding table is going to flip back and forth, and no one will be able to do anything with that MAC address. So that is one of those situations you do have to be careful. You have to wait for the person to leave the network, and then you can use your cloned MAC address. That's how that would work for those of you trying to figure out how it would work through all those pieces. Just change it in your driver, and you're up and running on that piece of it. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then you're not watching this for continuing education unit credit. But if you are, I would be glad to give you an email that certifies that you watched 1 hour of this video for continuing education unit credit, a webinar category credit. To be able to earn that webinar category CEU, you would go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, I want you to put your name, your email address, which is important because I'm sending this back to you. You want to be able to put in the subject line that this is the March 2021 Security Plus Study Group, and on a line by itself in the body of the message, put the super secret code word cloning. The super secret code word of this month is cloning. And if you'd like, put anything else you would like in there. I'm the one reading through these. So if you'd like to put a note in there, you'd like to say anything, good or bad, I'll take it. I'm fine with that. Put anything else you'd like in there and send it to me. So again, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. You want to put in your name, your email address on the subject line. Put something along the lines of March 2021 Security Plus. That's all I need to know. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the word cloning and then anything else you'd like in there. So there's your instructions. That would get you, and it takes me about a week to turn these around because I'm not as fast as I probably should be because I have to sit down and go through these, and there's a few hundred to go through every month. But there's some automation I have, but I have to manually check it, make sure everything in there looks good, that you actually do have the right things in there, and then I send you out the emails. So you'll probably, if you put multiple of these in, you'll suddenly get 3 or 4 responses from me relatively quickly after sitting there for a week. And in fact, I have some from last week I haven't done yet. So that will encourage me to get through all of this. So that's the way you do that. Our answer on this one again was indeed cloning. If you answered A, cloning, that was the correct answer. Now I know that we are, we're kind of at the top of the hour, but let's fit in one more question before we finish up the main part of this. This next question, kind of an infrastructure question and an important one at that. This question asks, a data center optimizes the cooling process by specifying the orientation of equipment during installation. Which of the following would describe this technique? Would that be air gap, dual power supplies, hot and cold aisles, Faraday cage, or USB data blocker? A data center optimizes the cooling process by specifying the orientation of equipment during installation. Which of the following would describe this technique? Would it be an air gap, dual power supplies, hot and cold aisles, Faraday cage, or USB data blocker? If you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer. Yeah, for those of you, Max in the chat room says he sent an email with a bunch of CEUs. Then they're probably sitting in my inbox waiting to be sent to you. And if you want to wait for the after show, I'll even look it up. I can even tell you quickly because they all go into one folder and then I just churn through them. And they'll go pretty quickly. And if you do them individually, it sure helps me a lot. Having one message with 10 takes me a lot longer than 10 messages with one, oddly enough, just because of the automation system that I have. It doesn't have a way to kind of look at 10 of them at a time and do something. Very, very simple to be able to go through. So that might help. If you're someone who is waiting on me, then you're backing up. I will get there eventually. Trust me. We'll find a way to make it happen. I hope I can make it happen anyway, to get it to that point. This is a good question. This is one that, depending on where you've been with data centers, you may be familiar with this or you may not. But this is obviously an important thing. And we'll talk about why you would change the orientation of equipment, what the cooling process is about, and how any of these things apply to any of that here in just a moment. Let's see how we did. Not as many people punching the right answer for this one. You're busy Googling it. No Googling. Do not Google the answer. The question again asked, a data center optimizes the cooling process by specifying the orientation of equipment during installation. Which of the following would describe this technique? Is it air gap, dual power supplies, hot and cold aisles, a Faraday cage, or a USB data blocker? 78% of you say it is hot and cold aisles is what it would be. 14% say it's an air gap. We have 4% that said Faraday cage, 3% said dual power supplies. Not many people chose those, and nobody chose USB data blocker for some reason. Why? Why not? And having that there. Well, if you are configuring equipment in a particular way to fit into the rack so that the cool air goes in one side and the hot air goes out the other side, then you are configuring your infrastructure for hot and cold aisles. This is commonly seen in a data center. It is used to optimize the cooling process, and you'll see why in just a moment. But it keeps all the cold air in a particular area, and it keeps all the warm air in a particular area so that you can really conserve energy. This is for energy conservation, so it becomes handy to be able to do that. The way that it works is that you've got all this equipment where the intake is on one side of the rack. The air goes through the equipment and warms up. And on the other side, it's hot. So you kind of put them back to back with each other so all the hot air is in one single aisle. The hot air will rise into the cooling system, into the HVAC ducts, and then it would go back into the cooling system, be cooled again, go back under the floor, and then back up again. So it's constantly cycling and being able to do this. This is what it looks like in the real world, if you will. Here is a very nicely enclosed cooling system where all the cool air is on one side. It's really cool air is coming up from the bottom since these are all closed racks. So it's coming up from the bottom through holes in the floor, is cooling, going into the middle, and then that hot air is rising and going back through ducts and into the cooling system again, which means that you can even see it's even closed off. You have to go through sliding doors to get into the middle of this. You don't want to work in the hot side on the hot aisle. That's not where you want to be. It's nicer to be on the cold aisle, although you may be too cold out there. The actual temperature ranges depend on the data center and the way people do it. Most data centers are probably colder than they need to be, and having those there. But this is one where I think very common to see these days because it does conserve energy. It's a lot less expensive. Data centers are expensive. So your data center will be a lot less expensive if you're using answer C, hot and cold aisles. It's not an air gap. An air gap is when you're physically separating devices in order to segment them. So for instance, on a switch, you can have multiple VLANs. But what if you're in an environment where just having multiple VLANs on a single switch is not secure enough? We want them on completely separate pieces of equipment separated by air. That is an air gap. So that's 14% of you chose that one. Would not be dual power supplies. Dual power supplies is a way to have multiple power supplies in a single device. If one power supply fails, the other supply can keep up the 100% of the load and continue to operate. A Faraday cage, hopefully not used in your environment. Very rare to find those, but it's one that will help prevent either radio signals from entering or leaving a particular area. Not common to see that at all. And then a USB data blocker is what you would have on a USB cable, plugging that in that would allow power to pass, but not data. We talk about someone being able to hijack equipment and receive data and transfer data as you're just trying to plug in and charge. Using a data blocker will allow you to do that safely for all of those. So the answer here, indeed, was C, hot and cold aisles is what you would use with that. Did you think you'd be designing data centers when you were studying for your Security Plus exam? Oh, that's only half the fun. There's plenty more to come. All of the questions we went through today came from the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you get your hands on these. They're free. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. I have a link there that will take you over to the CompTIA website so that you can download your own version. This should be the first thing you read through before studying for your exam. This should be the last thing you read through, perhaps used as a checklist before taking your exam. If you know everything in the objectives, you're going to do fine on the exam. You will not be surprised by anything. You'll have everything you need to know as part of your exam. You can find that at professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups for Security Plus every month, along with a bunch of other study groups too. So next week are our A+ study groups on the 6th and the 8th. We have a Network Plus study group scheduled for the 14th, and our Security Plus study group in April scheduled for the 21st. I implore you, I beg of you, always check in the calendar. My life has the tendency to be chaotic at times, so I sometimes will move some of these things around. So go to professormesser.com/calendar or click the calendar link at the top of the page. And please check the calendar if you're ever trying to figure this out, because what I tell you today could change tomorrow. But I do keep this updated all the time, both here and there is a Google Calendar that you can link to from that same link. And I also update the Google Calendar so it can just show up in your calendar to have all of those things there. If you are studying for the 501 exam, don't forget about the practice exams that you can purchase and have 3 separate 90-question practice exams, 400 pages. It's a PDF that allows you to go through both in digital, and I have a physical version as well. There it is. There's the practice exams. When I told you it's thick, it's a big book. It has a lot of questions and a lot of answers. If somebody would like to see that, I go through every question. I give you what the answer is for every question, and I tell you why the wrong answers were wrong on every single question and every single answer, plus links to the videos right there in the practice exams. Find that at professormesser.com/securitype. Wow, we went through an hour of Q&A already. Can you believe it? Stick around for the after show. I'm going to open up the phone lines. We'll take questions from the chat room. You can ask whatever you'd like. I might not answer, every question I get. I often don't, but I will take every question that you send to me and that you ask there. I will at least be able to see those. Don't forget about the daily or weekly pop quiz for Security Plus. We have it on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, all of my 601 videos are coming out right now. I released 4 yesterday. I edited 3 of them today. I'm shooting more today and tomorrow. There's just tons of videos coming out. If you want to be informed when that video is posted, go to professormesser.com/YouTube, subscribe, click the bell so you're notified and you know immediately when that is going to happen. Unless you're like me and you go into your subscribe list every night and you see what everybody's doing. It's another good way to do it. Don't forget about my course notes and exams. You can find that at professormesser.com/securitycn or securitype. And of course, the brand new thing today was the new discounted vouchers. If you are buying a voucher, get the voucher and get my Exam Hacks ebook for free if you buy the voucher on the Professor Messer website. Plus, it comes with a discount. Never pay full price for your voucher. You can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Wow, it's a lot of content. It's a lot of things going on. I think you can handle it. I appreciate you being here for this first hour. Stick around for the after show. We got plenty more Q&A to come, except you're going to ask me the questions. We thank you for being here in this first hour, and we'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Well, that was a quick first hour. Boy, that went really, really quick. Is there a way to buy the Exam Hacks ebook? There's not. Well, there is. It comes with the Success Bundle, but there's no individual purchase for the Exam Hacks ebook. So unfortunately there isn't. And it's an Exam Hacks for CompTIA exams. It's not specific to an exam. It's about how do you study for a CompTIA exam? What can you do during the exam to optimize your score? Because there are some techniques and some things you can do that will really help you during the exam. And I talk about things after the exam. What if it doesn't go so well? Are there things after the exam you can do to help prepare you for the next time? There absolutely is. And so that same Exam Hacks ebook works if you're taking the A+, the Network Plus, or the Security Plus. So that's what's there. I'm talking here. We'll come back to these questions in the chat room. I need to get the phone lines up and running. Phone lines are a way to communicate using your voice. For those of you wondering, some of us still do that. So I'm going to set up my phone lines so that I can call in so that you can call in, because my phone lines are in the cloud. So if you will bear with me one moment, I'm the only one here, so I have to call into my own show. Only takes a moment for me to do that. This person says, thank you. And then I type in a few things on my side and hit a pound key, and the lady says,
enter your 6-digit PIN.
I will do that if I can remember what that is. And if I did it properly.
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Thanks, nice lady. How nice of you to say thank you. Now that means that I am logged in, which means you can be logged in, but I have to change my lower third here real quick while we're thinking about it so that you can see the right phone number to call in. I will take questions from the chat room as well. So if you're in the chat room right now, I'm watching it as it goes by. So you can, of course, do that as well. If you would like to call in, though, you can call in from anywhere in the continental United States. You just have to use the toll-free number, absolutely free to you, 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies, 855-785-7545. If you are outside of the continental United States, you can also call for free if you use Skype, because Skype does not require any Skype minutes to call a toll-free number. I pay for it. So all you have to do is put a +1 at the beginning, put a +1, 855-785-7545. That's the number you see on your screen right there. It's right there. So call that number, and you'll be able to get in and talk to me there as well. But I'll also take questions from the chat room, which occasionally are much faster to go through, and be able to get through those as well. The question in the chat room, are the Exam Hacks ebook the same across all of my success bundles? Yes, they're exactly the same. So there's not a Network Plus Exam Hacks. There's not a Security Plus Exam Hacks. This is talking about the testing process. It's not about any particular exam. The exam for Security Plus, Network Plus, and A+, I obviously have a course just for those. So that covers the course-specific materials. But Exam Hacks is more about the process of just taking an exam and some tips and tricks that I have used through the years that might help you as well. Is there going to be a video on the OSI model for the 601 exam? I don't believe the OSI model is part of the Security Plus exam objectives. So it probably would not be in there. I think they're trying to think if there's a reference to the OSI model, and there really isn't. There's some references when we talk about equipment. We talk about switches being layer 2 and routers being layer 3. To be fair, a lot of the Security Plus exam materials and exam objectives assume that you already have information about the networking side of things. It assumes you've been through Network Plus. There's a little bit of an assumption there. So it assumes you already know about the OSI model. Some of that does kind of show up. There's not a lot of OSI references in the 601 exam anyway. You're probably not going to run into a situation where someone is asking you on the exam about what happens at a specific OSI model, because it is not in the exam objectives. That's the least thing you'll have to worry about. That's sort of a mantra I have, for better or worse, is focus on the objectives. If it's not listed in the objectives, don't worry about it. Could they ask you things that are not in the objectives? Absolutely they can. They even tell you that in the objectives, but they don't tend to do that. They tend to stay so close to those objectives that my philosophy is, if you study just the objectives and you go through all of the objectives, only what's in there, and you know everything that's in there, you're going to do fine on your exam. That's good to fine. Even if they ask you for something on one question that's not in the objectives, it's just a single question. You know all the others. That's my philosophy for doing those. So that's how that works. T-Bird in the chat room made my day by saying, not IT related, but why do I look younger today? You're darn right I do. Thank you. Thank you so much, T-Bird. Don't have to do anything else today. I'm done. Thanks, everybody. No, that's very nice of you to say. I eat well and I exercise. It's a bad commercial. I eat well, I exercise every day, and I take my whatever vitamin it is they take to be able to do that. When you purchase vouchers from my website, is there an expiration date? There is. It is good for about a year. So I say about a year because I have an inventory of these that I get, and that inventory kind of starts counting down from 1 year at that point. So by the time you get it, it's like it's 51 weeks is kind of the expiration date, but it's a year long for those. So that generally gives people plenty of time to schedule their exam to use the voucher. And of course, you could use the voucher to schedule your exam, and then as long as you give 48 hours of notice, you can move your exam out. So I don't know if that's a hack or not, because you can do that in an unlimited basis. I wonder how long. I guess it depends on if you're scheduling yourself for the 601 exam. You can only schedule yourself and push it out for the next 3 years. So maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what it is. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's sort of the idea. Do employers care what version of Security Plus you have? Most employers do not. The vast majority of employers do not. They just want you to be Security Plus certified. The only people, and we discussed this on an earlier study group, the only employers who care which version of the Security Plus you have are employers that are hiring trainers. So I'm not sure that counts. The trainers often have to be certified in that particular certification. And if you are instructing someone on the 601, employers often would like you to be certified in the 601. That's the only time I've ever seen an employer care about the 601 exam or 501 or which one it is. Most employers only care that you have a Security Plus exam, and that is it. Also in the chat room, Titan Husker asks, so that means the 501 cert will not be valid after July 31st? No, there's no such thing as a 501 cert. There is only the Security Plus certification, and it does not have a version. The thing that is retiring on July 31st is the exam that is numbered the SY0-501 exam. That is a very specific exam. It really describes the questions and the answers that they are giving you. Here's a set of questions. We've named these questions the SY0-501. Those questions will no longer be available after July 31st. But if you take the SY0-501 exam and you pass it before July 31st, you become Security Plus certified. Not SY0-501 certified, not SY0-601 certified. None of those things matter. All you are is Security Plus certified. In fact, I would hope if somebody got their Security Plus when they took the SY0-401 exam and they continued to update and make sure that they were renewing their exam every 3 years, they would still be Security Plus certified today, exactly the same Security Plus certification that someone who took the 601 today and passed would earn. Exactly the same cert. So there's no difference. Once you pass the exam, there's no difference, kind of what I'm saying. That's the real key, and knowing those different pieces of it. So that's where I would focus is don't worry about which version of the exam. Find the version of the exam you would like to take. 501's a good one. You obviously can't take the SY0-501 after July 31st. You have to take the SY0-601. That's the difference. It's about the questions they ask you. So that's the real key for me, is to be able to do that. Another frequently asked question in the chat room: when do I think I will be done with the 601 videos? I don't know, brother. I do not know. There are 100 videos that are done. I shot about 10 this past couple days. That leaves me about 68 videos to go, 66 videos, 70. Yeah, but 66, 65 videos to go. So whenever I get through them. That's not a great answer, by the way. It's an awful answer. But I don't have a time, a specific drop dead date. There's no specific, I have to get it done in a certain amount of time because I'm my own boss. I can do that. I want to get them done as quickly as possible. I am churning through these things. I work right now in the middle of these courses that I do. It's 15-hour days. So you get up at 6, you work until 10, then you do it again the next day. So I'm just churning through as fast as I can. I am just burning through this stuff, trying to get it done. So I hope I very aggressively, I could probably get it done at the end of April. Probably not. It's probably going to be a little bit after that, just because reality, what I want to do and what physics allows me to do are two different things. But it's going to be relatively fast. Next month or so, we will get it done because I'm tired of. In fact, the chat room's tired of talking about it too. I want it to be done as much as you do, because as soon as I finish the videos, I can write the practice exams for the 601, which I really want to do as well. So it all just rolls into one thing or the other. And that's what I'm going to be doing, is rolling into the next project right after this. And then right after that, at the end of the year, we're going to, we've got Network Plus is being updated. So, I get enough rest. Do not worry. I sleep like a baby. I'm doing fine. Apparently, I'm younger. So I'm going to ride that one the rest of the day. It's going to be with me the rest of the day. Let's go to the phone lines, the 804 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello, caller.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for calling. What's your question?
My question is, I'm actually newbie in 601, and I've been selected by CompTIA already to study that 601, so I'm a bit lucky for that.
Great.
But the problem is that they're not following the objective-wise, so it's kind of like, a combination of mix of things all together. So do I have to follow that way, or do I just rely on objective-wise? Because I'm actually torn in between.
It's a common issue, isn't it? I think it makes perfect sense for the people that are writing these courses. If you ever read an A+ book, a Network Plus book, a Security Plus book, you look at all the different books out there, maybe even just look through the table of contents, which you could do. You can go to Amazon and look through them for free. You'll notice that they all are structured differently, that they put the topics all in a different order, because every author, everybody who's training, has a different idea of what topics should be introduced first, which topics should be introduced second, and which topics maybe could even build on each other. And I think that's important, especially if you're trying to learn the content. That's a great way to learn. Having someone take you through kind of the introductory topics, then they go through more intermediate topics, then they go through the really hard topics, maybe near the end. That just makes sense that you would structure a book that way. In every single one of those cases, though, that structure is going to be different than the exam objectives. And to be fair, I do all of my videos in the same order as the exam objectives so that they match, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But I would be the first one to agree that the structure of the exam objectives is not necessarily the best structure in which to learn the topics. They are, for the most part, are independent, and you kind of jump into any video and grab some content and you're out. But some of those topics really would do better to have an introductory set of topics prior to it that would then lead it into that. But the objectives have never been written as a teaching guide. They are only written as a list of things you have to know for the exam. So yes, you probably have a training book for your 601 or a training guide or a video series or something else that you're using that does not follow the same structure as the objectives. And then you come to my course and think, well, how am I supposed to keep these things straight? Well, that's the reason I put them in the same order as the objectives, is because most books, all the good books, will cross-reference a chapter with the exam objective numbers that they are going through. So if you have a book for 601 and you're trying to figure out, how do I find the video that matches the thing that I am reading right now, they usually will tell you either as part of that chapter, or there may be an appendix in the book that takes each chapter and cross-references it with the exact exam objective. That may be the easiest way to go about doing that. If you use that process, caller, I think you'll be in pretty good shape. That should get you what you need to know.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate your call. Thanks for that. It's one of these questions that always tends to be a challenge just to find information. Earlier on, when I created my very first A+ course back in the 600 series, so we've had the 600, 700, 800, 900, now we're 1,000. So I've done 5 series of A+. When I did that first series, I put it in the order I thought would be best for people to learn. And what I found is that nobody could find anything. So after that, I realized maybe my job is not to put things in a particular order. My job is to make it so that you can find what you need, because I think a lot of people are just trying to hunt for that topic, watch that video, and then they're out. So how can I make it easier for you to find what you need? And that's why they're in that order. So a little bit of behind the scenes, a little bit of inside baseball for you. That's why it's that way. Back to the calls. We go to the 908 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how are you? I'm calling from New Jersey. My name's Gil.
Hey, Gil. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Hey, so I have a question for you, and I just want to give you 10 seconds of background information.
Sure.
So for the last 6-7 years, I've worked as a commission salesman, and then I left my job to get a associate's degree in information systems.
Okay.
I took a year off from there to try and learn like web development and other skills, but it just really didn't click, and I wasn't able to generate as much money as I was hoping. So I switched and went back to my original path of IT. I just got my Network Plus. Using your course, it helped a lot. And I'm looking to try and break into cybersecurity or some kind of system administration. I don't know if you get this question a lot, but I'm coming from outside of IT, and I just feel like it's like not my me, I don't feel like I can do it. I mean, even though I'm passing tests, even though I'm doing everything right, even though I get all the material, I just feel so like foreign. I don't know, it just feels like I can't break in to the industry. What would be your recommendation, or am I doing something wrong here? Am I thinking about it the wrong way?
Oh, it sounds to me like you are an IT person through and through. This is the way most of us in the industry go through our day. Because you can't keep up with everything going on in IT. There's no possible way you can know. First, you can't know everything about everything. There's no way to do that. Secondly, everything moves so fast that there's no way to keep up with everything and still know everything. Every day in IT is a learning process. Every day you're learning something new. You get handed a new project. Very often, I would be handed a project saying, you're now in charge of our media blender project, and it's going to integrate our phone systems with our website and the online chat. Go. And I thought, well, I know nothing about anything you just said. They go, well, you're about to learn because now you're in charge of the project. Go do that. And so you sort of have to jump right in into the very cold and very deep water and start reading and start testing and start learning. And you eventually become the expert in this thing that they have brought to you. But it's really more about being a niche. You know, you kind of started this where you said, there's obviously something that's appealing because you took the Network Plus and you're going through the process and you're like, okay, I get some of this stuff. The fact that you kind of bounced over to the web development side, I think is actually good because it gave you a chance to say, wait a second, this is not the same thing. That's a very different thing than IT and not exactly what I want to do. Let's go back to the thing we want to do. And I think for anybody who wants to get into IT or anybody who is in IT, I think that's a very important part of your career path is find the things that interest you, because in IT, there's plenty of jobs, no matter what you want to do. You want to work in a data center? There's a job for that. You want to work with databases? There's a job for that. You want to work with networks? Plenty of jobs. Want to do some security? Absolutely jobs available. You want to work on Linux? How about Windows Active Directory? How about, and on and on and on and on. So all you have to do is find the thing you like to do, and there is a job for that. And what people will tend to do is bounce into that job, sit there for 3 years, learn everything they can about Active Directory and Microsoft Windows Server and implementing applications and making them run in the cloud and setting up redundancies and having it be an environment that you're very comfortable with. And then you think, well, now that I know this, now I know a lot about securing Windows environments. Let's now move up to a job that is in IT security that talks about taking Windows and making it even more secure. So that's the normal process. It's kind of a tier. You kind of start at the bottom, work 3 years, and then you bounce up to the next tier, work 3 years, you bounce up to the next tier. Although I've had times where it's been 6 months and kind of not quite as high up in the tier as I would have liked. Sometimes you went down a little bit. That's the normal part of a career path. That's what I recommend doing, is jumping into it, learning everything you can. And to be fair, you're probably not even going to know where that next tier is until you're about a year away from jumping into that tier. Sometimes these things just appear because you start meeting people in the industry and they call you and say, hey, I know you've been working as that Windows Active Directory person for 3 years, but I'm working at this other place and we've got an opportunity to do some security things. Maybe you'd like to come over here and work with us. And it just blinds you. We're not just out of nowhere. That's what happened when I got my job working Palo Alto Networks as an SE. Someone called me and said, I just interviewed with these guys for a sales job. You'd be a great SE to go around with me. Let's go do this. And I thought, I was not expecting that phone call, but I said, let me look into this. And that completely changed my direction of my career. I was just driving down the road going to lunch, and suddenly your life takes a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn. That's completely normal in IT. And by the way, when I jumped into that, I knew a lot of things about security. I'd worked with security systems. I'd written a book on Nmap, but nobody knew what a next-generation firewall was because next-generation firewalls didn't exist. I took a job with the company that made the very first one. So imagine me jumping into that job at what I thought was a career where I knew a lot of things about technology, and now I'm jumping into a brand new job where I knew nothing about this technology because it didn't exist in the world. Completely normal. That's a normal day. So my job was to read everything I could read about it, was to talk to the development team, was to talk to the product management team, was to understand things I already knew about firewalls and apply that knowledge into a next generation firewall. Completely normal in IT. So a lot of people feel concerned when they start their first IT job or their second or their third, that they have that imposter syndrome that, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe there's a lot of things they're talking about in this room that I know nothing about. Nope. If that's what's happening, you're in exactly the right place. There's something to learn. There's something for you to know. If you're in the room and you really are too comfortable and you understand what everybody is saying, and you really have got down the technologies that everybody's talking to you about, you're probably in the wrong place. You probably should be moving up at that point. You should be tiering up and leveling up to that next level so that you are uncomfortable. If you follow the road of being uncomfortable in IT, you will continue to get better jobs. You will continue to make more money. You'll continue to learn more, ostensibly be more valuable to your employer. And that's the part that I think is the most exciting in IT, is not only not knowing this and having to learn it and learning something new all the time. It's never the same thing every day. But in my mind, you also have to get very comfortable at saying, I don't know. Somebody, if you're sitting in the room and they're talking about something you don't know about, and they come to you and say, what is your opinion of what we've been talking about? And you're like, I don't know. I have no idea what you people are talking about. I just got here. I have never worked with these technologies before, but give me a week. I'm going to grab the manuals. I'm going to talk to you offline. We're going to go through all of this. I'm going to come up to speed very quickly, and we'll figure out these details. I'm a warm body. You can throw me at it, and I'll be your expert in it, but you're going to give me some time to ramp up. That's a completely normal response. And in every place I've ever worked, they've gone, okay, that's fine with us. Come back in a week. Let's see where you are. Work that line, Gil. Just work that unknown, pushing the envelope and being uncomfortable in your chair, and you will be exactly the right IT person.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
Appreciate the call. Best of luck. It is one of these things that it sort of is normal. I think I would go to probably 3 calls in that last position as a systems engineer for a next generation firewall. One of the few people at that point when I started, I was one of the few people in the world that even knew some of the intricacies of this, but had no idea, because it's a very broad product that has a lot of different features and capabilities. And even I was there for about 7 years, which was a long time for me. But I would go into meetings every day where a customer would say, I have a question, I have a question, I have a question, I have a question. I would know the answer to the first one. I would know the answer to the second one. I would know the answer to the third one. Fourth one, I have no idea. And I would say, nope, I don't know that one, but I do know somebody who does. Let me jot that one down. I'm going to go back and ask my brain trust. They're going to tell me. We had a mailing list. We had people who were experts in the field on particular subjects. I could ping that person and say, what do you think is the best answer for that? And then I can come back with the customer. Knowing how to and when to say, I don't know, is a very, very valuable skill. In our industry, we need more of that. A little bit more humility, a little bit more willingness to learn. You don't have to be the expert. Nobody knows everything about everything. And in fact, often not knowing gives you an opportunity to learn. And then you're able to tell the customer, and then you're able to tell the other people you work with. And next time you can answer the question for those pieces of it. Completely normal. That's just how IT works. Sometimes it be like that. 818 area code. Let's go to that caller. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Is this? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hello, caller.
Oh, thank you so much, Professor Master. Long-time listener. Really appreciate all that you do.
Thank you so much.
I just passed my CISSP exam.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm just very happy and to talking to you. So CISSP, as you know, has a fair bit of network information, and I was thinking, should I go more by going and looking at the Network Plus certification or such, or is this enough? Because I'm mainly working on the security side. So what's your take on that?
Well, the security side is, of course, very close to my heart. CISSP and other security certifications are so well respected in the industry. They are something that many employers are looking for. But from a practical sense, and this is something that I think others who are going through the Security Plus exam may not realize, is that you don't often start in a security job. There are some out there, but the vast majority of IT jobs, at least entry-level IT jobs, are not security IT jobs. A lot of them are kind of a general use or a help desk type position, although you can find network operations center and security operations center jobs as entry-level positions. I'm not saying there aren't any. I'm saying relative to all of the others, it's a very small amount. But I do tell people once you get into security, there is a significant knowledge base that you need about networking. And you hit on this exactly with your question, which is, I need to go back and get some of this networking knowledge people are talking about, because it is the case where you are configuring a firewall, you are setting up some type of IPsec configuration between site to site, or maybe an SSL VPN for end users. You're configuring all of these. There's routing, there's IP addressing, there's sometimes NATing involved. There's a lot of IP addressing and networking side of things you have to know. If you're implementing redundant firewalls, there's a whole redundant routing and redundant switching configuration, especially related to these days Cisco switches and Cisco routers. And you have to know how to integrate with that. You have to know how to engineer it. Before you even plug in the first cable, you've had to map out the entire configuration, and you need to know the advantages, disadvantages, and how it will react when you're starting to make these changes on the network. The only way you're going to know that is if you have some networking knowledge. And that's why I always tell people, if you're planning to get into IT security, get as much knowledge of networking as you can. You need to become an expert in networking. You need to understand routing. You need to know how to configure routers. You need to understand switches, configuring switches, the wireless side of things, the wide area networking side of things, the routing of IP, get into the IP configuration side of things. The good part of that, though, is once you learn about route redistribution, which is a very common thing you run into with firewalls, route redistribution works effectively the same way on everybody's device. It may be differences in how you configure it, but route redistribution is route redistribution no matter what system you're on. Spanning tree protocol works the same regardless what switches you happen to be using. A static routing works effectively the same way regardless of the type of router you're using. So what you're trying to do is learn the very broad topics and how they might be implemented on one manufacturer's equipment, and you can effectively take that knowledge to other equipment as well. There are obviously nuances on everybody's different equipment, but the standards and the structure is effectively the same. So if you're someone who wants to get into security and you're thinking, maybe I should take Network Plus, maybe I should go take a CCNA, which I think eventually the CCNA is probably the minimum of knowledge you would want to have prior to jumping into IT security. Probably you'll want a little bit higher than that before you get to that point. That is an absolute viable and recommended path. I think that is important that you do it. And if you want to get into IT security, it's going to be critical you have some of that networking knowledge.
Awesome. So you start with the CCNA and then the network security, or how do you? And the follow-up question to that, you have some material on network security, or how do I, like, what other venues I should start looking at for that?
Yeah, it sort of depends on where you are and what you want to do. I think if you were in a help desk position, it makes sense that you would probably get a Network Plus, kind of the entry-level piece of this, especially if you're not planning to get into switching or routing administration, at least not immediately. Maybe Network Plus is a good starting point. However, if you're thinking, I really want to make a hard push into network administration, I want to work with the guys that are configuring switches, I want to work with the team that's setting up the routers, I want to do some wide area networking, or whatever it is, when you get to that point, you may say, well, let's not even go to the Network Plus. Let's skip over that. Network Plus is kind of the entry level. Let's go straight to the Cisco CCNA. Keep in mind, of course, that some of the topics that you're going to learn on the CCNA would have been covered had you taken the Network Plus, which means you're going into it with a little bit less knowledge. It's going to take you a little bit longer to come up to speed. It probably would have helped if you would have had the Network Plus. Then you could have skipped over a lot of the nomenclature and the definitions. You already know what spanning tree is. Now let's just configure it. If you're jumping right into the CCNA, then you kind of have to start at the beginning. Oh, what is spanning tree? Tell me about that. So there's a little more studying you would have to do. And then at that point, you can jump into the networking team and become familiar with setting up the routers and the switches and configuring the routes and the networks. At that point, it's a normal kind of obvious jump into IT security from there. And that's a very common path for a lot of people, is they move up from the server or workstation or help desk administration. They then move up into networking. At that point, they then move up into security. It's not always the path. One of the great things about IT is there are no hard limits or particular paths that you must take. It's really up to opportunity, who you know, what you know, and being able to bring all of those things together. So your path might be very different than mine or anyone else's, but basically the same foundations are useful to have at every step along the way. So you've got some choices. You can go any one of those paths. You may want to check to see what employers in your area are asking for. Maybe you find that no employers are asking for Network Plus, so maybe that's not an emphasis. Or you may find that every employer is asking for Network Plus, so maybe that would make a good first step. That's really up to your geography and what's going on, but I think that's a very good way to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate the call. Thank you for doing that. In the chat room, is subnetting in the CCNA? Holy cow. Subnetting is the CCNA. You will be doing tons of subnetting in the CCNA. I wrote my 7-second subnetting specifically to get me through the CCNA because it's just ton. Every question, I think, not every question, it seemed that way, that every question had subnet in it, but it is extensive. It is intense. You only have 7 seconds. You don't have time to do binary conversions on the CCNA. It is extensive in the amount of subnetting you need to know. And quite honestly, we sort of have to do that in our normal networking security jobs as well. It's absolutely an important part of what you do. And you do get used to kind of doing a lot of it in your head. Although a lot of us that are in the field that have been working with it forever, we still get it wrong all the time. Subnetting is just math. You tend to get math wrong a lot. So it's just one of those. Fortunately, it's addition and subtraction math. It's not calculus math. So there's a benefit there. It's not chemical analysis math. That's the real key, is figuring out those pieces. So maybe that will help you as well as you're stepping through all these others and trying to figure out where do you even go with this? How do you even handle it? That's how you handle it. Plenty of subnetting though. Let's go back to the phones. The 682 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Hi, caller. Caller. Are you there? Make sure you listen in on the phone and not the stream, or else you'll be hearing me in a delay. Are you there, caller? Well, it's worth a shot anyway, right? We appreciate you giving it a try. That's one of the challenges, is just making sure that works. If you are calling in on Skype, there is that nice Skype testing service lady. Make sure you check with your testing service. Make sure that your mic is working, your headset is working, and that kind of thing. There is not subnetting on the Security Plus exam, thankfully. There might be a little requirement that you understand some of the nomenclature, but you probably won't get much of a subnetting emphasis at all on there. There might be a firewall question, and you've got a firewall IP address there, 192.168.1.0/24, and you have to know what that means. But it's not like you're going to be doing calculations on that. You really are summarizing an IP address subnet with the subnet mask, usually in CIDR block notation. That's what would be important that you would know for those. How many subnetting questions can you expect in Network Plus? It's such a small part of the exam. You might get 1, you might get 2 or 3, you might get 0, but probably not much more than that for that. So don't spend all of your time for Network Plus studying your subnetting, because you'll get one question on it. And then you'll think, why did I spend all this time on one question? You could have I don't say you should ignore it for Network Plus, but there is a strategy in my mind that says you could completely ignore subnetting and instead concentrate your efforts on learning everything else. And I think you might come out ahead. I think that's such bad advice. That is my bad advice for the week, which is don't study subnetting for Network Plus. But the reason I'm saying that is because you could spend that time studying other things for Network Plus and probably making more points on your exam for that. I don't know if that's really great advice. I think it's bad advice, but I think there's a little bit of truth there. So balance it how you would like. I think there's so little on the exam, you can make that decision yourself. Back to the phone lines. Let's go to Great White North, 343 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from? Hear me. See, we're listening in. Make sure you turn off that stream and listen in on the phone lines. You'll just hear me and you and me and you, and we'll just keep going back and forth, and that doesn't help anybody. We go from the Great White North to Cayocho, down to South Florida, the 954 area code. Not quite to Miami, but hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
How you doing, Professor Messer? This is Kevin from Pembroke Pines.
It's Kevin from Pines Boulevard. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. Last month when I spoke to you, and I told you about I won my Security Plus. I forgot to ask you about the CySa Plus, and also about about that and become a SOC analyst and CCERT or whatever. I mentioned to talk to you about that, but the main thing I want to know is that the CEUs that from your study group, would that be applicable to the CySa Plus as well too?
CompTIA does a very nice thing in the in their CEU qualifications, and it's a very broad set of qualifications. I think they say if any of the topics on the event that you're watching are associated with any of the topics on the exam, then that would qualify for a CEU. So that means that what we went through today would qualify for A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, CySa Plus, Pen Test Plus. It's very broad. So I like that with CompTIA, which means that you could do that. Now, the problem you'll run into, for those of you thinking, I need 50 CEUs to renew my Security Plus, I'll just watch 50 of the study group replays and I've got my CEUs. Well, it doesn't work like that, because they put the CEUs into categories, and this category of CEU is the webinar category, and you can only use a certain number of webinar categories in a 3-year renewal period. So if you're on A+, for example, I think you can only use 4 of these towards your 20 credits that you need. And for A+, or for Security Plus, I want to say it may be 8 or 10. You can watch 10 of these for credit for your Security Plus, but you still need another 40 after you do that. So you'd have to do something else. A lot of folks are just taking their Cert Master CE, which is an online exam or online CBT with questions they ask there. And you can take that casually, go through all of it, and in a few hours, you've renewed your certification without doing any CEUs. So I guess it just depends on which way is the best way for you, Kevin.
Oh, okay. That's good to hear. I was wondering about that. I was thinking about, going that direction where we're trying to be a SOC analyst. And I noticed that the CySa Plus is basically like an evolution of Security Plus.
Yep.
It's basically, even though it's blue team, but it's still like an evolution of it. I noticed that with that. I was wondering. I said, I think I'm going that direction, whatever. Trying to go that direction and whatever.
I like the content on the CySa Plus. They really build on Security Plus. It's a lot more hands-on, doing actual tasks with these security technologies. I like that part of it. I think it probably is comparable to the sort of the CEH, the Certified Ethical Hacker. I think that's probably the one that is the best correlation. It's not direct, but it's pretty close, where you're really learning some practical skills as part of the CySa Plus. And it's a fun certification. I'm seeing more and more people asking about it.
Yeah, I know that. And another thing I want to ask you too is that, in your opinion, this is your opinion, but why is it that that the IT industry have a high turnover rate? I was wondering about that, but I'll wait for your answer offline.
I don't know that I would qualify IT as having a high turnover rate. I used to work in a a company that provided third-party call center outsourcing. So whenever you would get a phone call at 6 o'clock at night when you were trying to eat dinner from DirecTV or from Verizon or from Sprint or from whoever it was, that was really coming from my data center. I was in charge of the data and voice networks for those facilities. And what was interesting about these locations is that for call centers, the turnover rate was probably 50%. Like they would come in and we'd have to fill half the jobs constantly. Now, can you imagine in a room full of 250 people that you are always having to find and fill positions for half of those seats constantly? That's turnover. That's tons of turnover. What I found in IT is not really turnover is the issue. I don't think people are leaving IT when they get into it. What I tend to find is I refer to it often as the 3-year rule, but it's often shorter than that, where someone will stay in a job for 3 years and then they go to the next job. Very often the next job they're going to is in a different company. And I think that's the real challenge. What you're running into is that when you move up within a company, you don't tend to get the same increase in pay as if you were to move to a different company doing the same job. For some reason, there is an increase in pay. Maybe the reason is that you've sought out the higher paying position. Maybe it's not a mystery. Maybe there's an intention there and you've been able to take advantage or to execute on that intention. So you're finding jobs that have more money there, that a particular employer, that they know what they're paying you. They know what they're doing there for you. They're putting you into a new position, but they're trying to save some money as well. And they're not going to pay you the same amount as what they would to bring someone in from the outside. Sometimes it happens. So I tend to see this as not somebody losing a position, but really more of us moving from place to place. And I do see a lot of that in IT. It is a very common part of IT, is move from company to company to company. In my career, I have left companies and then years later came back to those companies. So it's not uncommon to be a boomerang, to boomerang back into a job with an organization because they already know you. And it's sort of got around the problem. I moved out to make more money and I'm coming back at the higher rate. So you sort of did the same thing. You just had to leave to get the higher money so that they can then pay you a little bit more. That's kind of the problems I see. If it's a problem, it's more of the way IT works these days. And has for a very long time, and probably will continue to work that way as well, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, your opinion is always, is grateful to me. I always make sure I listen to your opinion. So I just wondered, I know it's like in the IT industry, the turnover rate is really, I see people for like about a year and then they go on.
I
was wondering that.
My first job, I worked as a field salesperson in South Miami for a computer company, just a storefront down there across the street from the South Miami Hospital and on US 1. And I worked there 9 months. That's as much as I could handle driving around Miami and Broward and Dade County and some Palm Beach every day doing field service. After 9 months, I was done. And I took a job and worked 5 years at an insurance company that was right on 25th Street, right there on the runway of Miami International Airport. So I worked there for 5 years. And then I got a job working for a manufacturer where it was really more traveling in the east or southeast United States. And then bounced back to South Florida. Really, I stayed in South Florida as my home base, but bounced back to a full-time job in South Florida at that third-party call center company that was up near the Golden Glades interchange, and stayed there for just over a year and a half or so, and then bounced out of there and went somewhere else. So that's one of those cases where I really went from company to company to company to company, from job to job to job to job. And it was because I was staying at least for a certain amount of time in each one of those, that was okay. In fact, it worked for me. I got better jobs and more pay and did what I wanted to do by moving up and moving around to these different places, in many cases in the same city. So those opportunities are certainly available in South Florida. Tons of jobs available, tons of opportunity. Heck, just in Pembroke Pines and Miramar, you've got big buildings of headquarters for, although it's a difficult market right now, but they're going to bounce back. Or the cruise lines are there. You've got tons of manufacturing there. You've got insurance and financial organizations there. You can go down to Miami. You can go up to Boca. Lots of options available. It's just a matter of finding the right thing and what you want to do.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, Professor.
I appreciate the call, Kevin. Best of luck.
All right. Bye.
It really, geography is important. Geography is very important for these types of jobs and what you want to be able to do. In the chat room, Chuck asks, can a 40-year-old break into the IT field for the first time? And you absolutely can. I often say the computer has no idea how old you are. Mine may, because it's, why are you typing slower? Well, that's just me as I get older. The real problem I think that you have when jumping into another industry are the problems you have regardless of what industry that is. Because very often if you move from medical into IT, you move from legal to IT, you move from manufacturing to IT, you move from whatever it is into IT, you've built yourself up over the years to a certain level in the industry that you're in. When you get into IT, you kind of have to go in the bottom again and work your way back up. This is time consuming, but it's necessary. So can you break into IT as that person? Yes, but you're going to probably start at a lower level, which unfortunately means you will probably be making less than you make right now. That may or may not be true, by the way, but let's just say on average, that's probably the case. So now you're moving into IT and making less money to start with. But what I tell people, and I think this is so important, there's no ceiling in IT. How much do you want to make is directly proportional to how much time and effort you put into it. You can move up very quickly and you can start making more money in a relatively short period of time compared to a lot of other industries. Another thing that I think is very, very important if you are moving from one industry to another, especially if you are in your 40s and 50s wanting to do that, is that you have built a network of people. You have a lot of people in your industry. There's people that you know in your environment. They can help you, and they are happy to help you, you will find. And there may be a way to leverage what you already know. If you are somebody who have worked in medicine and you want to move into IT, there are some very good IT departments in the hospitals that need medically knowledgeable people working there. If you are working in manufacturing, there are manufacturing IT departments that would love to have you work there. If you are in law enforcement, there are law enforcement IT departments that would love to have you work there. So leveraging what you already know can be extremely valuable and can help move you up even faster. And the last thing I'll say is there's nothing more important when looking for a job than finding people you know. And you've already built this really good network of people. Ask those people, do you know anybody who's hiring for IT? Does your work, especially if they work at another company, you work in an insurance company, who should I talk to in your IT department? And I will make sure that you get a copy of my resume so you can send that to them and get the finder's fee for that. So there might be a financial advantage for them doing this. But there's also, they know you, they know IT, IT knows the people who already work there. You already have a huge advantage when it comes to getting that job. Knowing people who work there is an incredibly important part of the hiring process. So be sure that you take advantage of that. Is it more challenging than if you were younger? It is. It is. But you also have experience. You have worldly experience. You know how these things work. You have probably a little more maturity, and you know how important it is to get to work on time and to work hard. And if you do those things, it's surprising how quickly you can move up that ladder, because people would like people in charge who are more of a leader, and people who are a little bit older perhaps have a little bit more leadership-esque qualities about them. And I think that can help you, especially if you do all of this and work through those ways. Those are all considerations. I think they're all important, and I think they should be considered if you're planning to make that change. Just have a strategy. Don't dive into it blind. Have a reality for finances, a reality of what jobs are available, and use every possible strategy you can to get those positions and start moving up. It's a tough field. It's a tough thing to do, to change in midstream, but absolutely doable. And what better place to do it than IT, where there are tons of jobs of different kinds and plenty of jobs that people don't want to do. That is what you should be looking for. Find the thing that nobody wants to do and go do that. They'll hire you right away. Oh, you want to do that? Let's get you in that position. We can't keep anybody in that position. And that's a great way to move up the ranks. Find that niche. Let's go back to the phone. 619 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Simon. I'm actually in Rochester, New York, but I came from San Diego, so that's why you see 619.
Gotcha. Thanks, Simon. What can we do for you?
Yeah, so first I just want to say thanks again for everything that you do for the community. With sorry if I'm a little out of breath. I was just doing some stuff. But yeah, I actually use all of your material going through A+, the Network Plus, and Security Plus.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, I got the Security Plus, I think, end of May last year, and eventually found a help desk role at MSP.
Great.
And yeah, actually related to what you were just saying, I came from manufacturing as a supply chain planner.
Okay.
And I just wanted to hop into a different career here. And it's sort of related to that, my question. I had to take a pay cut and all that too, like you were saying. So I'm hoping this is an example for your viewers here. But I've grown a lot in this role, and I've only been in it really on my own for 3 months or so. It's very technical work. The MSP, I deal with other like system administrators and network admins.
Sure.
But I want to grow. Like, I don't know, like, what do you suggest if, you know, I'm at L1 right now, but I've been given a lot of good feedback. I'm trying to go to really quickly to like an L2 or something, but like I have an idea of myself in like 2-3 years time frame being the system administrator. And if I'm still kind of growing within the role, like, what would you suggest? Do you think that going to an L2 and L3 within the same kind of company is limiting my growth?
I guess it sort of depends on what that means in your organization. A lot of the times when people are moving up, especially sort of the help desk or the priority ranks where you're level 1, level 2, level 3, depending on the environment you're working in, there is often it's sort of the same thing but a different set of responsibilities. So you may not be necessarily learning anything new, or the things that you're learning are relatively small, a little small jump in knowledge that you would need to know to move up between level 1, level 2, and level 3. Or it may be a very broad set of things that you have to know. Maybe the next level has a completely different set of responsibilities, and so it would be a good learning and growing process to be in that role. I don't know. You would know the answer to that better than I would. But one of the things that that I like about what you said was that you already had the idea that based on what you've seen and what you're trying to do, the next logical big jump, that platform up, that level up that you're trying to do is to level up into system administration, which is a great place to go, by the way. Knowing everything there is to know about an operating system is a valuable set of skills, whether it's Microsoft, Linux, and to some degree Mac OS as well. But you will find every organization has Windows, and practically every organization has Linux to some extent as well. And depending on where you are in the country, there may be more of one than the other. There's so much cloud-based Windows going on right now that it just seems like that's a very, very popular, very hot area. A lot of hiring going on in that area right now. And probably what I would extend to you is a recommendation that you go start getting some of those certs, whether it's something you're going to use in your immediate role or not. You know that you want to be at that point. You know you want to be doing some system administration. So pick an operating system. If you like Windows or you see tons of Windows in your area, go see what jobs are available in your area. And if you just see tons of Windows, go get some of those Windows certs that Microsoft has, especially the ones that integrate into their Azure cloud, because every employer seems to be asking for those right now. If you like Linux and you're in a part of the world where a lot of people are hiring Linux people, go get some Red Hat knowledge. Go get some Linux Plus certs or whatever it happens to be so that you have those certs in your pocket. Now, are you going to be able to use those certs in your current job? Maybe. Maybe the employer will be impressed by that and move you up to level 2 or move you up to level 3. That's possible. But I think probably the more valuable part of this, especially in your current role, is the fact that as you go through this cert, you're really learning the content. One of the best certs I ever got was the 6 that I needed to earn my Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, the MCSE. And this was way back in the original days of the MCSE. But I knew really nothing about the internals of Windows. But trust me, you go through Microsoft's MCSE or go through a series of Microsoft certifications, you learn Windows very, very quickly. You learn it very, very well. And what I found is the knowledge I learned through that, even though it didn't have a direct relationship to the job I was in, I was doing a job at that point where I was a systems engineer for a protocol analysis company. Well, I knew when I walked in and plugged into the network and I saw Microsoft Communication, I suddenly understood more about what was going on between those machines. Before it was me looking at, there's some SMB and they're doing something here relating to name services, and I'm not sure exactly what. Oh, wait, now I understand what that is. Now I can see the name services happening for Active Directory. Now I'm seeing the applications make the calls. Now I'm seeing the DHCP that's integrated in the server show the integration into the DNS. Just a lot of that suddenly clicked. It all started working together. And here's probably the even more interesting part. I was still able to use that knowledge throughout my entire career because Microsoft Windows is still around. So it's one of those where what I consider to be kind of a small investment of time, it was really a year's worth of time and investment to get all 6 of those done. But a year's worth of my investment in off hours, I'm reading through the book. You sort of get into a mode of studying for certs. You're sort of in the cert mode where you're reading, you're taking your test, you're reading, you're taking your test. You're doing hands-on. You're doing everything you need to know to pass the exam. But you get into this mode where you start doing that, and now suddenly your employer may not realize it, but you're suddenly more valuable. And now you can start setting up your own home labs. You can start doing interesting things with Windows, and you can walk into those interviews for a system administrator position and talk to people at a higher level about Microsoft Windows, about Active Directory, about installing applications, about securing it in the cloud, about setting up the cloud-based services. Those are things that you would not be able to do had you not spent the time to get that certification. The information is out there. It's just up to you to go out there, figure out a way to get through it. It may take you months of time, but the value at the end of that is going to be well worth it.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you said resonates with me in terms of like, I went through, those 3, and really, I think I found most of the application I learned was for Net Plus, right? And everything just clicked a lot more. I actually, I did fail that one, but that's kind of on me. And eventually, when the MSP that I work for, a lot of it is troubleshooting the network, and I, was so glad that I knew all the subnet stuff, the DNS stuff. It's still very complicated in my opinion, but it is very helpful knowledge and was very much reinforced. It's so much different in terms of like studying for a certification as compared to getting all that hands-on experience. It reinforces it in a different way. And so I encourage people to do your home labs or something like that, and you get more of that hands-on experience, obviously. I
agree.
Yeah, you were saying the L2 and L3 positions here actually do differ in terms of the content. So that's why I'm thinking it's a good idea to stick around for a while. They acknowledge that I was rising fast, and they're actually giving me the dev time to spend time learning. Actually, there's Net Plus kind of condensed version of it that they provide in their own learning program. And one of the things that we're going towards is Azure. So I think that might be a good idea to stick around and learn with them, provide more value to the company as well. But yeah, for my own time, actually, while it's not necessarily IT, I do want some scripting programming knowledge. And I just finished a Python, MIT's the MOOCs that they have class. But like you said, I'm kind of in a constant getting some kind of certification or something after work. And I'm really glad I hopped into the field. Just what I was doing in manufacturing, I just did not like the role. But now I'm really growing a lot, and I'm really engaging with the material. I find myself still kind of, because we work through cases, of course, help desk. The more complicated ones, I'm I wonder if what I proposed as a solution did actually fix the issue. So, thanks again for everything and for the advice here.
Thanks, Simon. Appreciate the call. Best of luck.
All right. Thanks. Have a good one.
One of the things that I found interesting in that one is that what a good setup that Simon had there, because he wanted to learn more, and this doesn't always happen. The employer wanted him to learn more too, and noticed that he was. So that's a very good position to be in. And they said, well, let's move you up to level 2. Let's move you up to level 3. Let's give you all the things you need to be able to move up the levels. And for those of you that have never worked with an MSP or worked at an MSP, as he said, it's a very technical role. There's not a lot of room for a failure. You really have to do things very quickly and very accurately. They have to work. You're seen as the professional, as the most knowledgeable in these technologies. So there's a little bit of pressure to make sure you know what you know. What a great position to be in, though. I know I've talked a lot about sort of the 3-year rule that we have in IT and moving up those tiers, but I've worked places for much more than 3 years. There's one of the companies I worked with, I worked a total of 10 years. I left and then boomeranged back and really worked there almost 10 years at a single company. The last job I had working for someone else, I worked there 7 years. So it doesn't have to be a 3-year rule. If the employer is one that encourages growth, they give you the things you need to move up, you're learning something, it's an interesting job, you're working with good people, it's a good company, they're profitable, all those things fall into place. You get good benefits, there's a good reason to stay. At some point, you will be making a change, but sometimes you can stick around for a very long time, and it's a good relationship for both. You're learning something, and your employer's getting a better employee out of it as well. So that's a win-win. As long as your bank account, the paycheck keeps going up, that's a great place to be. Why wouldn't you do that? So go that direction too. Let's try the 682 area code again. Hey, caller, which name were you calling from?
Yeah, this is John from Texas.
Hey, John from Texas. What can we do for you?
I have a question. I'm also a facilitator of IT certs. I try to help people out with those. I'm just curious, what kinds of resources do you use when you're building your material?
I try to get my hands on every possible thing I can. It's sort of a combination of things. I've worked in the industry since I was just a wee boy, just a little baby. I've been working in IT and moved myself up through the years. But of course, that experience gives you some background into the things I talk about, but doesn't necessarily really prepare people for the level of research that goes into these courses. And I'm talking to you, you understand this, but other people may not, is when you are explaining to somebody the intricacies of a particular technology, you really need to know that pretty solid. I've already spent a lot of time doing hands-on. I've already set up and run this in my lab. I've grabbed maybe 3 or 4 different industry books written by other people to see what they think of the technology. And I will tell you, not all books are of the same quality, as it turns out. I've done my own research online. It does take more than a Google and a Wikipedia. You got to do a little bit more than that. But you sort of combine all of these things together to kind of put together, do I understand the technology itself? And then once you understand it, there's a completely different set of questions that have to be asked, which is, now, how do I tell this to somebody else and have them get it? That's another set of challenges. That's sort of, there's some secret sauce there, I think, in everybody's realm of trying to, how do I get across to somebody this topic? Do I use a third-party type of description? Do I simply jump into it and demonstrate what it's doing? Do we grab packets and show packet by packet what it's doing? You know, it just depends on the topic and what you're going through. Is it a diagram? Is it animation? There's obviously challenges for what I do because it's online. It's a YouTube video. You can't spend 2 hours talking about spanning tree protocol. You need to get in. You need to talk about it. You need to get out. The video serves a purpose in your training. It is not the only thing people are going to reference, nor should they. There should be a book or two. There should be other videos they look at. There should be hands-on. There should be Q&A. All of these things work together. So I'm never building my materials or any single one of my materials to be the only thing people use. It is a ingredient that goes into the big pot that they have to stir around before they ever get anything done. But I try to get my hands on as many different things as possible. In order, I like to say I triple check everything, and I try to do that where I have 3 different sources that are qualifying what I think it is, just to make sure I get it right. That doesn't always happen, but most of the time I'm able to bring those things together. Sometimes in the exam objectives, though, and you've probably seen this, the exam objectives can sometimes be a little vague. And in some cases, the exam objectives are just wrong. They're using the wrong term with the wrong, not everybody's perfect. There will be mistakes in everything that you find, but you just kind of have to go across as many different platforms, as many different books, as many different videos as you can to try to figure out those pieces, to the point where there have been companies that I wanted to talk about in a video, and the company name was not one I understood how to pronounce. So you end up calling the company just to hear their automated message pick up and say, "Thank you for calling the What's-It company." Okay, it's What's-It. Okay, let me phonetically write that down in my speaker notes so I can use What's-It instead of What's It. Those are just dumb things that you kind of have to go through, but it's important for somebody who's learning this that they learn it the right way to begin with. I would hate to tell somebody something wrong and then suddenly now for the rest of their career they're talking about the wrong type of technology in the wrong position. That's the real key to me, and that's the real challenge. But that's sort of the process I go through. It's kind of a summarized and very quick version of it, but that's what I do.
I appreciate it. I mean, I love your videos. I recommend them to people all the time. So continue doing what you're doing. Always here to support. Thanks.
Appreciate it, John. Thank you for the call, and thanks for those kind words. It can be a challenge sometimes to get the right balance. I don't intend my videos to be the be-all, end-all. They should not be the only thing people use to study from, but I sort of build them that if you already had the level of knowledge they talk about in the exam objectives. You've already been working for a year and a half in IT. You already have some security knowledge under your belt. They could be the only thing you use. Not my recommendation. You should always use every piece of study material you use. But I kind of come from that approach, and I come from the approach that sometimes you really need to be online to get what you need and get out. Video training is different than book training. Book training is different than hands-on training. Hands-on training is different than Q&A. But all of those are important, and you should be able to use all of them when you're working through your studies. I think that's an important part of this too. And if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to figure out what do I use for study materials, and you're only using one thing, you should be using more than that. You should be at least get a book. Books are so inexpensive relative to everything else. But that is one of those things that is incredibly important, that you use as many different materials as you can to be able to study for these certifications. Some books are better than others. Some videos are better than others. Some video courses work better for different people. I'm also not saying that my video course works for 100% of everybody. Some people will send me notes saying, I tried your course, it just wasn't for me. Rock on. Do what you need to do. Find the one that does work for you. The important part is you find the one that speaks to you, that helps you learn it. Use that one and go get your certification. Ultimately, that's the goal. If my stuff helps, that's great. If it doesn't, find one that does. I recognize, and I try to make these so that they will fit almost any type of scenario, but you can't please 100% of everybody. It's not, that's humans. So I try to fit the best I can with what you got there. If it works for you, that's great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. But I don't necessarily think you need to focus on any single source. In fact, get a couple books if you can, because I think some books are better than others. When I got my first A+ certification, I used one manufacturer's book, one author's book, and I used the dummies book. And I went through the first book and went through the whole thing. And then I went to the dummies book and I realized, wow, this one's written much better for me. This one's much better for me. I should have started with this one. And I don't know if it's that way because I started with the first one and I got a good foundation. And so the second book was an easier read, or if it really was a better book. But it was a good example of how I was able to grasp other topics even better by reading through the second book. So that's the difference. In the chat room, is there any reason I don't do CySa as a training course? Just physics, just laws of physics. That's the only reason. I'd love to do, I have a list of probably 10 other certification courses I would like to do. A single course takes me about 6 months from scratch, about 4 months if I have to revise one. That's a lot of time. That's me working full time. So that's a lot of time to create a course. And as you're probably aware, you have to update these courses every 3 years. So it's not like you do it and you're done. You do it and then you have to do it again later on. So there's a cycle set up with these. CySa has not traditionally been incredibly popular. I get about once a month somebody asking for that. Now I realize, of course, because I don't offer CySa might be a reason I'm not getting people asking about CySa. There's some of that, but it was really more of a popularity thing. For this experiment to work, there has to be people watching. So there is a business piece of this. I have to have enough money to keep the family fed and to keep clothing and to keep shelter. So there is a corporate reason to be profitable, and to be the most profitable, I have to be able to have materials that people will watch. And if not a lot of people are asking for CySa, that's probably not high on my list. There are probably other certifications I would do before CySa, but I would love to do CySa. It's on the list. It's just about time. If you could make the day longer, if you could have an extra day in the week, that would be great for me. But we're sort of at that point right now. We just don't have the ability to do that. And so it's more about transitions and getting things done. But I've been sort of adding on to the things I do too. I didn't used to have practice exam books. Now we do. Well, it takes months to write one of those. So I'm sort of extending out with the existing set of people studying, but it would be nice to have one more course, at least one more course on the site. What that would be, I've got some ideas, but it's something that probably is just going to have to wait until the end of this year to start work on, because right after Security Plus is done, Network Plus gets updated. See how that works? It's more physics problems to make that happen. So that's the problem, is just making it all happen and being there with that. In the chat room, how do you get to an elite level? I want to be Mr. Robot levels of good. That's good. How do you get there without being a black hat, especially on the security side? With security, especially with security, there is that's a very broad breadth of knowledge. You will never become an expert in everything there is to know about IT security. There's too much to know. There's no way to do it. I would never be a good pen tester, probably. But on the other side, more on the blue side, I've got skills there that I've honed over time. And I think the real key, if you ever want to do this, the real key is to focus very heavily on one particular topic at a time. So start with one. What do you not know a lot about? Do you know a lot about Nmap? Have you run through every Nmap scan there ever is? You know, there's a lot of Nmap scans. There's not just one Nmap scan. There's 12, 15 different scan types. Have you run through all 15 of those? Do you know the difference between all 15 of those? Do you know when you would use that scan type and when you would not use that scan type? Do you know which scan type is able to get through firewalls better than others? So that's a good example of how you could spend a week with a single application like Nmap and become more knowledgeable in that application than probably 95% of anybody, of everyone who knows about Nmap. You would have a very good knowledge because you would be able to understand all of those different scans. You'd be able to understand the scripting language, the Nmap scripting engine, NSE. You'd be able to maybe run it at the command line, run it in a graphical front end. You'd be able to understand the output a lot better. So all of these things, you sort of spend your time on that one thing and you become as knowledgeable as you can with that piece. Now go to the next thing. Now that you know Nmap, let's do pfSense. Let's learn about that firewall. So let's load up pfSense. Let's get it on our network. Let's load up some rules. Let's look at the logs. Does pfSense do IPsec? Let's do an IPsec tunnel between pfSense firewalls. Whoa, IPsec. There's a whole nother set of things to learn. Now let's dive into IPsec. So see how that works? So you start just adding on those things and bringing together all of these different pieces, but don't just Wikipedia it. You want to get into the details of it. You want to learn everything that's in the configuration settings for IPsec and know why that setting is set that way, understand what it changes, understand how that can be optimized, and understand if you get it wrong, what the results of that might be. Now go to the next configuration setting and do exactly the same thing. Does that take a long time? It takes forever. It takes months. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes you will never know everything there is to know about that particular technology. That's okay. You now know more than 95% of the people that are out there. Those are the skills that get you those higher level jobs. Those are the emphasis. Don't just be a generalist. You need to find something that interests you, and you need to go into that niche. You need to become a niche player. Find the niche you like and go down deep into that rabbit hole, as they say in the chat room. Go deep into that. Figure it out and start just pulling it apart. Start understanding it at a very detailed level. Become an expert in just that one thing. It's very hard to be an expert in everything. It's very easy to be an expert in one thing. This is what they don't tell you. Find yourself being an expert in that one thing. When I was working at Palo Alto Networks with these next generation firewalls, we had experts in routing. I could call my BGP guy, and he would tell me everything I didn't know about BGP, which was a lot. I had a switching person, so any layer 2 or even layer 1 stuff, I could talk to them about some intricacies of setting up redundant firewalls in places where I had layer 2 stuff going on, which is not easy, by the way, especially active-active. But I focused on the API. So when people wanted to know, how can I write a script to get into the API of a Palo Alto Networks firewall and make it do things? So I wrote some scripts, and I wrote a script to do just simple things at first. Back up the configuration and store it somewhere else. So I had kind of a simple free backup solution. You could go out all your firewalls, grab the configs every night, and store them somewhere. Okay, well, now take that. Let's write some scripts that would create a report. Let's do some reporting from the data that's stored in the logs of these devices and create some reports from that. So that it just builds on it. And then people started calling me to say, how do I set up the script to do this? How do I set up the API to do this particular thing? Will that work? Will that not work? And I ended up being on we had specializations and groups of specializations. I was in the group that had API specialization. Was it the number one best thing I probably knew on that firewall? It was not. Was it an opportunity to learn a lot more? It absolutely was. And I started learning a lot more about the API and getting into more details of the API and figuring out how to make it do more with the API. And eventually, that's the group I was part of. So it's interesting where these things go. I didn't think when I started working there that I'd become an expert in the Perl, Python, script level API integration, but that's where I ended up. And I became an expert in that. When you become an expert in anything, you become more valuable. And when you become more valuable, they got to pay you more money, ideally, for those. That's the idea of it. Now, to Bob's point in the chat room, okay, well, can you give me an example of a job in which you should be really good in one specific subject? There's not one of those jobs. But there are jobs where knowing and being an expert in that one specific subject gives you the ability to be in a different group or to have a specialization that people can call on. So in my case, I was the same SE as any other SE. I was a senior SE at Palo Alto Networks, just like all the other senior SEs at Palo Alto Networks. We were all over the country, all over the world. And some of the senior SEs were really good at the routing side. Some were really good at the VPN side, especially client-based VPN, because we had a very advanced client-based VPN solution. Still do, I guess. I'm not there, but they still do. And of course, had a lot of people doing API things. So we were all doing our normal day job of being a systems engineer. We were effectively going to people's facilities. We were talking to customers and potential customers. We were showing them the technology. We were seeing what their problems were, and we're finding solutions to their problems. But of course, there would be other engineers around the country that didn't have an expertise in APIs that would call me and say, here's what my customer is trying to do. How could we make that happen with the API? And we work through it. And then when I had a question about BGP and implementation with a weird BGP implementation, I would talk to the BGP engineer. And he was doing the same job as me during the day, but he had the expertise. So that's what, from my perspective, that's the value of the niche, is being able to work down to that level. Now, what will happen is the niche will grow out. Once you've finished learning everything you need to know about Nmap, and then you move into the firewall, and then maybe you move into an IPS type functionality. Maybe you learn everything there is to know about Snort. Now suddenly you've got this very broad and deep set of knowledge about some very key skills that can be used in other places that may not even be necessarily those IPSs or their firewalls or that particular scanner, but now you understand how those work and you know how to configure them. And configuring this firewall is not very different than configuring a different other kind of firewall. And it's very easy. It's very easy to make a small move at that point and figure out the details. So that's the goal. That's the idea. That's the point. That is how I think a lot of people will focus in on those niches and then be able to make a career from that. For me, the niche started, The first one I really got into was, interestingly enough, middleware to a firewall. That's where I really learned this skill, was that there was a machine, it was just a PC, that was middleware between some emulation software that allowed people to access an IBM mainframe. So they would load software up on their Windows machine, bring up a Windows console. That would connect to some middleware on this machine that would then talk the IBM language on the back end. I'm being very simple here with the descriptions. But that's the problem, was in this particular organization, nobody had really spent any time doing any type of maintenance to this middleware. It was something where we said, don't touch it. Nobody knows how it works. Nobody's an expert in it. In fact, nobody even understands the basic. Well, we sort of understood the basics of it, but nobody understood anything more than that. And the problem is that we had about 5 of them, and throughout the day, each one of them would crash at random times. And people would be on the mainframe, and then all of a sudden their screen would go black, and they couldn't get anything done. And we had to go in, we had to reboot the machine. Incredibly disruptive. So my boss said to me, "You're now the expert in this product." I'm like, I don't know anything. What are you talking about? There's a note on here that says, "Don't touch it." And you want me to be the expert? He goes, "Well, you need to now take the note off, and you now need to figure out why this thing is rebooting. You need to make it stable. You need to understand how it works on the inside. You need to now be the expert in that thing. Go. Okay. All right." So I walked around. I asked her, "Anybody have the manual for this thing? Where's the manual?" I found the manual, stuck in a back in a corner somewhere in a closet. Read everything I could about it. Manual wasn't great. I called the company, called help desk. I said, "I have some short-term problems I need to resolve. This thing's rebooting every day. What do we do?" And they said, "Well, okay, let's step through the config. Send us this. Send us these files. Send us this configuration setting. Tell us about what your environment is like. Let's look at it." And we just sat down for an hour over the phone and said, "Well, here's what it is." They go, "That's a little low. This is a little high. Given the amount of memory you have in the machine and number of people connecting to the device, this should really be set to this. So let's make these changes and see how it works." And so we sort of incrementally did some change control. We made those changes. I became more familiar with the software. We made incremental updates. I made it so that the device could boot from its own internal drive, or we could even plug in an external drive as a backup. So there was some redundancy. And in a relatively short period of time, they suddenly became stable. Like I say, suddenly, we worked really hard to make sure that we had a new configuration that really was built properly for the software to be optimized. And suddenly the device was never crashing anymore. And it just ran weeks at a time. And suddenly everybody forgot about the days when it would break every day. And now it just became a normal part of the infrastructure and started working properly. So that's when I suddenly realized, wow, I now, by the way, I also became the expert. I was now the expert in this thing. I read the manual, I talked to the company, and I just sat through sort of hands-on troubleshooting with it. But the best time to learn something is when it's broken, ironically enough. When it is broken is where you really start understanding how these things work. So I became the expert. And now whenever anybody had a question about the middleware, they just came to me. "Hey, we're having this thing. We need to pull up another connection. Can we put another machine up? Should we use an existing one?" And now I had an understanding and said, well, we've got a little bit of room. We could connect more people to this one. But if you had 100 people, we should probably build out a new device. So let's do that. That will guarantee that machine continues to run. Okay. I'm now the expert in that piece. And it stayed that way until I left. Somebody else had to take over at that point. But I stayed in that company just over 5 years. And that was probably year 3 that I got that knowledge. So we were able to do something with that just by becoming an expert in that particular field. Now, if the downside of this, if there is a downside, is that I don't have any place to work on that technology anymore. It's knowledge that is worthless to me. The knowledge of understanding the nuances of this particular software for the middleware, which they don't make anymore, which the company's not around anymore. It doesn't work this way anymore. It's information that I will never use again. But the process of me learning how to attack an issue, how to solve a problem with that level of pressure or that level of visibility in the organization, how to properly communicate the concerns to a tech support and work through the problems and become an expert in that, you just duplicate and you do it over and over and over and over and over again. So as long as you're doing that, that's really the secret sauce here. It wasn't the technical knowledge I had. It was the process that I had set up that I figured out based on being very focused on that individual type of technology. And it works with anything. Doesn't matter what it is. It works with any operating system. It works with any software. It works with any technology. Just do more of that. I think you'll be in good shape. Well, that brings us to the end of another study group after show. We kind of went overtime this time. I hope that's okay with everybody. But I appreciate you being here. It's one of those that we love doing that first hour where we get to ask you questions. I kind of like the second hour or third hour in this particular case where we can kind of talk on Q&A about different ideas too, and maybe give you some ideas on what you'd like to do in your career and some of the things that might excite you about information technology. There, like I said, there's no ceiling. And there's tons of things to do. Find the thing you'd like to do and then go do that. Thanks for being here. We'd love to see you on this. Thanks for checking in. Make sure you join our weekly pop quiz question for Security Plus. It's right there on the main page of the Professor Messer website. Thank you for those of you that are looking to get your vouchers now that we have discounted vouchers on the website at professormesser.com/vouchers. Thank you for being on the study group, and we will see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.